Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me for a very special episode of That Nerdy Site Show this week, I have Frank Bizzani. How you doing, Frank?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. And we have Logan Wilkinson here. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Hanging in there with, all world events,
Sure,
all
yeah.
things considered. It's been a wild couple of weeks here. And kind of in addition to the general rigmarole that we have out there, I will, of course, direct everybody who may be listening to this to kind of we've been very much in support of the Black Lives Matter movement here at That Nerdy Site. We mentioned it a little bit on That News You Care About last week. We mentioned it on That Wannabe Film Class as well. I will include links to Black Lives Matter kind of like resource guides in the description of this episode. So if you can support, please do. Please kind of keep that movement going because we're reaching that like point where people are starting to get a little exhausted by it, and I don't want that to end yet, as obviously change is going to be a long journey on this one, and can't kind of we can't pull our foot off the gas just yet. So there'll be that in the description below, and then also just kind of in general, if you like what you hear here, our kind of basic rigmarole, please remember you can like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast everywhere you can. And if you are feeling generous to us, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Just like our wonderful producer Jason Bellevue has, and also on that note, we got word from Ben that he's not in the best of shapes. So our hearts go out to you, Mr. Bellevue. Thank you for your support, and we hope you have a speedy recovery from what you're going through.
Absolutely.
All that out of the way, not out of the way, but all that important stuff kind of covered now. We'll get to the main thrust of this week's episode, which, with the anticipation of Last of Us Part 2 coming up, we're dedicating this episode, Frank, Logan, and I, to kind of focus on a retrospective look back at the original Last of Us. All three of us have replayed that, so and Logan, as the super stan of The Last of Us, I'll kind of hand the show over to him to kind of take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you set it up well, right? Like, we're at this point where by the time this goes live, The Last of Us Part 2 will be coming out, God, is it a week and a half from now?
Yeah, end of the following week. Basically, the reviews will hit like a week from this episode, I think.
Yeah, and so we're in it now, right? And so myself, Trevor, and Frank all decided to go back and replay The Last of Us from that Ultimate Video Game List Show fame. And so, yeah, we wanted to see 7 years later how Naughty Dog's like landmark video game, The Last of Us, kind of holds up, what influences it had on the industry that we can kind of see, on storytelling in particular, obviously, and then also, how much I will gush about it and how many times I cried going back to it for the first time in 6 years, because as Trevor mentioned, The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. So, yeah, I think the right place to start, the easy place to start, are just kind of quick fire Last of Us thoughts playing it again. Any kind of antidotes you have from the first time you played it. Trevor, we'll start with you. What did you think of The Last of Us?
I really enjoyed Last of Us back when I originally played it. Back when it first came out, I was one of those people that played it in June of 2013. I think is when it launched. I basically played it like day it came out and ran through it. And I remember really thinking it was a very great step up for Naughty Dog, kind of moving away from the pulp, adventure of Uncharted and what we'd seen there, but still taking a lot of that action adventure kind of style and bringing it into this different, more really grounded and down to earth kind of post-apocalyptic storytelling. I remember really enjoying that, and then I didn't really play it again for a few years, but I played it the first time I ever did an Extra Life stream. Somebody was kind enough to gift me The Last of Us Remastered, and I basically played through the whole thing in one sitting as part of that stream. And then I haven't really been back to it since then. to come back to for this. So it'd been a few years, and one of the things that like really caught my attention this time around was like how brief a lot of the like iconic moments of this of the game are. Like there would be specifically, I'm thinking of like cutscenes where I was like, oh, that's it, I'm back in the game. Okay, I for some reason I thought that was a longer thing, and I remembered that being longer or something like that. So it was interesting, coming back to it. But yeah, I think it's a masterclass in storytelling. I do think some of the gameplay feels a little heavier than I would like it to coming back to it 7 years later. And we'll see kind of how they've evolved on the gameplay by the time Last of Us Part 2 comes out. But overall, I think still a very, very masterclass kind of a game.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
I when The Last of Us originally came out and back in June of 2013 on PS3, I didn't play it back then. I didn't play it for the first time until the remaster came out on PS4. I kind of, when it came out, I was very aware of it and I was very interested in playing it. But a couple weeks after it came out, I had a lot of the plot ruined for me, just like spoiled. Mainly like the last half of the game, like from Sam and Henry like forward, basically. So it kind of like took the wind out of my sails on like wanting to play it, even though a lot of times that doesn't really happen. But I was just kind of like, okay, well, I kind of got this big moment, and a lot of these things kind of ruined for me, even some of the smaller moments. But so I kind of just took a step back and waited until the remaster came out. And when the remaster came out, it was about like a year or two later. So I was finally ready to dive in and play that Left Behind, and even like one or two random matches of multiplayer, and then kind of dipped out of there. And I still liked it. Like I still had like an enjoyable experience, but I think a lot of the punch was just like not there. Especially the first time through, at least. And for me, in terms of like the story, and like I really, again, like it's a great story. It's told like really, really well. Like there's all these still amazing Naughty Dog things you're getting there. But the first time through, I just think it didn't like hit as hard as like it did for a lot of people, for me. And that's I was really interested to go back and revisit it now, because like I haven't touched it since back in 2014, 2015, when I just like replayed it, or when I played it that first time.
Mm-hmm. How did it hold up the second time playing it?
Oh yeah. So I found it much more enjoyable the second time through. I definitely was like, okay, I'm gonna try to like take my time and really get like immersed in. Like I was really trying to give it like the chance, because again, it's not like I hated it or disliked it. Like it's still an amazing video game. Like it's still, I think it's in the top tier. But I was really trying to give it the chance to like get in and really kind of like get into my brain and kind of make me care about a lot of these characters. And I think I got a lot more of that the second time through, because I got all the collectibles. I stopped, I read every single note, I listened to every audio log, I did every optional conversation, I listened to all of Ellie's jokes. It's like one of those things of like I went full 100% in. And I think a lot of that stuff is really additive to it and really makes the experience a lot better. So I think I walked away with like a much more positive experience this time.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, for me, I played The Last of Us when it came out in 2013, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, it became my favorite game of all time. But the irony to your kind of story, Frank, is the fact that I always say that my favorite playthrough of The Last of Us actually isn't that first time through. It was playing it again for the second time a year later, which is also the last time I'd played it until now. And like both times prior to this time, I basically played and beat the entire game in like 3 days. And yeah, playing it through that second time, like there were like entire sections of the games I'd forgotten. So like going back through it was like my first time doing it again. And just kind of, I think, picking up on threads I hadn't noticed before, kind of catching things I hadn't caught before, and just really falling in love with this kind of cast of characters that we have, Joel and Ellie, obviously. And that second time playing through The Last of Us in July of 2014 is still probably my favorite single like video game like experience today, still even. And obviously it was my favorite game of all time. I love The Last of Us. Joel's my favorite character. Ellie's right behind him. Playing it again through now, it's interesting because, seeing the things that I again, 6 years later, seeing like how I held up, it's interesting too because the first 2 times I played it, I mean, the first time I had no sort of base. Like, unlike maybe Trevor, I went into The Last of Us with like not super high expectations. Like, I was like, Naughty Dog, my favorite studio, I love that, but like, this is such a different thing than Uncharted. Like, I didn't really know what to expect. And then playing it, I was just like obviously floored. And then the second time, it's like, I know I love this game. It's only been however long it's been. And also just like, I played that in a moment where like I was kind of grieving and trying to find solace as like a family member had passed away. And so like, I just sank myself into that world. Whereas now it was, all right, 6 years after I last played the game, can it still match these highs? Can it still be just as good? Like, am I going to love it as much? And there was more like, this was the most like cautiously worried I've ever been playing the game. And just because like how much I've talked about the game in the interims too, so going back in and being like, all right, it's still great, was a nice kind of relief. And we'll get to it later on, I'm sure. But I actually really liked the fact that the game, and in particular, Joel, plays a bit heavier than a lot of video game characters do now, because I think Joel is somebody who is not the usual video game protagonist, right? Like, he's somebody who's not like a 30-year-old strapping guy. Like, he's like 50-something and has been through stuff and is kind of just a bit slower and a bit heavier because of that. But yeah, The Last of Us is great. I very much still loved it. I'm still in love with this game, still in love with these characters. So what we're going to do now is just kind of go season by season through the game and talk about kind of our favorite moments from each season, something we liked, maybe something we didn't like from the season. And we'll start with Summer and Trev. What did you like the most from the Summer section?
Well, so one of the things I want to give a shout out to is actually the prologue.
Yes.
Especially because
this
like
is a trick question. You got it right.
Yeah, playing that first time, where like none of that early Joel, none of like Outbreak Day had been shown off in any of the preview
or
footage,
teased, or even like hinted at. Yeah.
Like we had the only thing at this point, it's kind of like, oh, now I expect there to be like a flashback section of an Uncharted or a Naughty Dog game, because we first got it in Uncharted 3 when we played as young Drake, and then we got it here as playing on like Outbreak Day with Joel and Sarah, and then Uncharted 4, obviously going back and playing both as like pre, adventures with Sam, and then also like Sam and Nate as kids. So at this point, I expect it, but that pattern had not yet been established as like a Naughty Dog storytelling kind of approach. So the fact that you get something to kind of like ground Joel in and kind of like introduce us to him and why he is the way he is 20 years later when we experience the rest of the game, was just a gut-wrenching and heartbreaking kind of introduction to this, and in particular that the Sarah death scene, just like her screeching and squealing in pain right before she passes every time, like just it is gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. And it easily like establishes why Joel is going to be the hard character he is for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's funny for me too, because the first time I played it, like I was blown away, and then even going back now, like I feel like the kind of prologue has taken on kind of. It is one of the most talked about aspects of the game. I feel like when people talk about The Last of Us, is this kind of opening prologue, and I feel like it's got this kind of level of like mystique around it to the same degree of like Up's opening credit scene, and like it's like, man, I feel like it's gonna be hard to kind of maintain how great it is, and yet in like just like in Up, it's like shit, like this is just still really poignant and beautiful. Like that was, you can kind of check it off there. Like the first time I teared up in this game playing it again was right there. Like Sarah's death, I think you hit the head on the nail there. Like her squealing, her screeching as she kind of dies, just like immediately floors you, right? Like Joel's face, I think Tommy's face, the fact that it is such a hard cut ending to that section after kind of the adrenaline race through the city and everything, and all the clickers coming behind you, it's like kind of the first glimpse of like maybe the good guys aren't so good. Obviously, with like your kind of experience with the soldier you meet, it establishes Joel, I think, so well. Like, it's just such a great, I think, open to the game that establishes that world and kind of the tone of it so well. Yeah.
And then even like watching it or like playing through it now, and the cut that goes from that moment, because we don't go immediately into 20 years later. You get like that montage of the outbreak kind of growing and the world changing and all that stuff in the opening credit sequence, which takes on a completely
I was gonna
different
say,
light
yeah, right.
in an era where we're living in our own pandemic,
Yeah.
with COVID-19 kind of all around us right now. Like that was extra surreal, kind of like experiencing that in this replay.
I think that's honestly like one of the strongest openings in like any video game ever, probably. Like I definitely feel like it deserves to be in like that conversation for, you know, like the strongest and most like impactful openings right out the gate. That's honestly probably, I'm not even kidding when I say that's probably my favorite part of The Last of Us, like in its entirety, honestly, is like the prologue, which is probably, I guess, weird to say, but I think it kind of
It's
goes
a great opening.
well, it definitely is, and I think for me, I think it goes a little bit into like I knew it was going to happen in the latter half of the game. I didn't know any of that was going to happen, and it's like it just opens up with this right hook across the face. And yeah, the first time I
Yeah.
played it, I was absolutely teary eyed and just like, oh my god, like, and I was like, we're about to go on a ride with this, like. And that's almost one of my things where like for my first playthrough I felt like it almost like never hits that hard again. Like I felt like they came out with like this right hook and then it just never had anything like as hard as that. But now replaying it a second time, I definitely feel like there is a lot more emotion and obviously to continue going forward. And yeah, like Trevor said too, it definitely really explains why Joel is the way he is, to the point where he doesn't even want that photograph, where he's like, it's
Yeah.
in the past, we're not going to talk about it. It didn't happen, basically.
Well, and I think one of the things I've always loved in Naughty Dog games is kind of the small details that they do, right? And like for me, it's anytime any sort of kind of emotion or reference to the past, or even like as time goes on, he thinks of Ellie or talks about Ellie, like he'll just keep looking at the broken watch that he got from Sarah. And they're like particular moments where like he'll do that while talking about Ellie or talking about like the past or whatever. He'll just like touch the watch, or like there's a moment where him and Ellie are kind of having their big blow up fight, and he just kind of like glances down at the watch kind of thing. Another one where they're on like the overlook and he looks at like the connections that he's building, and then like Naughty Dog is subtly kind of building in for us as well, are I think so well done. I think you can't really talk about The Last of Us without this opening prologue, because it grounds and establishes Joel and Tommy like so well, I think, right? And like one of the things I really enjoyed about the prologue, going back to it now and like obviously knowing what happens, is it was the first instance of many I'll talk about as we kind of go through this game, where for the first time I really began to get the idea of like maybe Joel was never the best person, right? Like, because there's a particular moment where they're like driving by like a family on the side of the road, and like Tommy and Ellie want to stop, and Joel says like, just go on, like go past, and like we have a young kid here too, right, kind of thing. And I've never been somebody who really subscribed to this series or like the theory that Joel's like the bad guy or Joel's a villain. And then playing through it again like this time, this first time I was like, I don't think he's the villain for sure, but definitely Joel's like villainous for like unquestionably. Like he's like, it's also the thing of like Joel's never really maybe as great as we think he was.
I mean, I would say it's not that he's a villain; he's just not altruistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right?
He is absolutely looking out for him and his own.
Yeah.
Yes, Joel is very much like, he's not a selfish person. He's a selfish individual. He's not trying to give here to sacrifice anybody else, and he's not the traditional video game good guy by any means, or just traditional good guy in any kind of story. And that's like the first time that we get a glimpse of that, is them driving past the family. And there's so many more that I'll touch on as the game goes on. But I think playing it through, when you get to the kind of the final moment, obviously you expect Joel to do one thing, but I think what's smart is kind of going to The Last of Us again. You see so many seeds of the game being like, when he got to the position, there was no reason that you should have thought he would make this decision, because the game has been pointing you so many times that he's not that kind of person. But yeah, the prologue is great.
Yeah. In terms of like actual summer moments, while I very much love like everything in Billstown, the thing I would want to shout out is actually the whole sequence of Ish and the kind of the water like refinement plant or wherever, like
Sewer,
the Ish's place basically.
Yeah.
That whole sequence from basically when you wash up on the Pittsburgh shore all the way through, even all the way through to like the end of that chapter with the devastation of and the tragedy of Henry and Sam, really. But like that whole chunk, just it is again going back to like Naughty Dog's excellent ability to tell a story. The way they managed to tell us like an incredibly compelling story of Ish from, you know, seeing his boat washed up and reading kind of the notes and stuff, and it's all completely missable. Like you could very easily just kind of see this whole thing, and you see like some drawings and stuff, and you just like plow through that whole section. You could easily do that, but the fact that the collectibles are there and they tell such an interesting and compelling story made me absolutely want to seek out every single note to hear to understand what exactly happened in this area and see like the his story of, you know, coming in to see how bad the world is screwed up, to going and kind of like keeping to himself, to then like trading with outsiders, to realizing he doesn't want to be alone, to bring those outsiders into his kind of home, and like they build a life together, and we don't know how, you know, how long that lasted and was good, but given, you know, the size and scope of that area, it seems like they had a good thing going for a good period of time there before, you know, one wrong move, one door left open and a clicker gets in, and people having to start like killing themselves and killing the children just to save them from a worse fate. It's just like devastating.
They didn't suffer.
They didn't suffer. That's again just great environmental storytelling through that whole sequence. And then like kind of getting out of there and feeling like you've you know escaped the fate that they could not, in right into kind of that the town where like you have some of the best kind of backstory conversations that I think happen in that town with Sam and Henry, talking about, you know, ice cream trucks and Ellie not believing that kind of stuff. That's where you get, I think, if you've been like playing through all of the jokes, I think that's where you get the last of Ellie's, you know, run of jokes, which makes sense given what is about to happen. And then just the whole sequence of getting to the sniper and then being the sniper is some of the most tense gameplay, I think, in the game. In a game where like it is survival horror with clickers through and through, but you know, just the never-ending sharpshooter that like if you peek your head out at all, he will have his sights on you, and so you have to just run from spot to spot, you know, house to house, taking out a handful of guys on the way down to that house. Like my note as I was playing through kind of again was just like, fuck that sniper. Cause yeah, I just like, and I was playing through on like normal mode or something like that, and he was just like picking me off anytime I tried to make any kind of movement. And I was like, how, like, it is not fair that he has that good of accuracy. But yeah, that whole sequence really is, I think, the standout for me in summertime.
I completely agree with you there, honestly, and I especially really love the moment where after you get to the sniper, like when you get to take over, because it's like you're definitely right, like it is super tense. But for me, that's like one of the only moments in the entire game at all you're kind of like powerful, because you could just get this one shot like military rifle that just destroys everybody. And like it is tense where you're trying to like hold them off, and I love when the guy comes out of like the machine gun thing with the Molotov and you finally get to take that asshole out. Like
the tank.
Like I love everything like you're talking about, and that's like also one of my favorite parts of the game, probably, especially everything with Ish. But yeah, I really love how it all culminates in kind of that battle in the suburbs over the getting to that sniper's nest and then using that to like get everybody over to you. I also a weird thing, I won't go on about this too long, but one of the things that did impress me about Naughty Dog's like attention to detail and just how much like craft they put into these things is that like when you go into that house, there's a one of those bead curtains
Yeah.
that divides the like the kitchen and the living room. And I swear to God, that's the only bead curtain in the entire game. But when you walk through it, it makes the bead curtain sound when the beads clink together after you walk through it. And
Yep.
I was like, that's just so amazing. Like they took the time because somebody I'm sure was like, well, if you walk through it and it doesn't make a sound, it's going to like break the immersion because everybody knows what this sounds like. So they went and they put the sound effect in. And I'm also sure if there were enemies around, like the sniper up top is like a canned moment. But if there was enemies around, I'm sure that would alert them too because they heard a noise.
Exactly.
So I'm
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it's amazing. Like that's just the thing that I stopped and was like amazed by.
So yeah, I mean, Ish. We could do a whole podcast on just Ish, and his story. It's that good. And one of my favorite things that me and Trevor have talked about off kind of air was the fact that Ish's story obviously ends ambiguously, and how much I love that, right? And in particular, because I think honestly, when Naughty Dog made this game, they very much never intended to make a sequel to this game. And so I love the fact that Ish's story ends ambiguously, just like, I mean, obviously Joel and Ellie's story is going to end ambiguously
Yeah,
at the end of this game.
Just like life. When you
yeah.
only see a slice of life, you don't know what happens next.
Yeah, and like I love the fact that like, because Ish is like the kind of, I think, kind of iconic side character story arc in this game, and that you like never meet, like kind of like that kind of thing. And the fact that his story is, yeah, like Chris said, it's just like a slice of his life. Like he just like crash lands in the ship. That's all we know about his beginning, and then we just kind of get this run through this individual area, and then him, Susan, and some kids, not even her kids, just some kids, are off. And like, what happens to them? Do they go to Pittsburgh? Do they not? Do they go somewhere else? Like I was just kind of Googling around about Ish, and apparently originally they had a letter from Ish be in the mail in like the Left Behind DLC, and then Neil Druckmann talked about how ultimately they took it out because they felt like it was too much of a coincidence, and they wanted his story and his fate to kind of be ambiguous. And I love that. I love the fact that, because like, I mean, certainly for me, like after I get that last note from Ish, I was like riveted the first time through, and even now, even playing through it again, like it's such great environmental storytelling, like all the different drones, all the different boards of like the rules, like the water filter, like plant, like everything in like the sewer system is so well done of just like establishing this life for this character. And yet again, I got caught up in the fact of like, how does like, what is the last note say? And the last note is super beautiful, right? Like it kind of ends with him being like, ultimately, like I have faith in people, like I just have hope, and I have to carry on for her, for like Susan in that case. And like it's actually like a really, like at this guy like his absolute lowest, he still has like this kind of like flicker of hope in kind of humanity and people and what can come next. Like in a lot of ways, Ish is far more of a traditional hero than Joel is, right? Like where Ish has like faith and like hope in people, whereas Joel's has kind of just been stomped out in a lot of ways. And like Ish keeps inviting people into his life, into his world, and kind of keeps taking that risk and chance, whereas Joel, I mean, even Ellie was kind of forced on him, and eventually he like fell in love, but that obviously took time. But yeah, his whole arc is great. For me, as much as I love Ish, I don't even know why either. Like I just have such a soft place in my heart for Billstown. Like I absolutely love it. Like he's just utterly nuts, and it's great, and it's fantastic, and I love all of the booby traps. Like that's like one of the only times that we had, like I think it might be in summer, I think, when we get to Pittsburgh, but I think
Pittsburgh's
even that is
still in
it. But like Billstown and that one other spot in Pittsburgh are the only times where like traps are really used, and I love it. I love navigating all of them. I love how he like collects clickers around to like unleash some people if they go in the wrong areas. I love the everything involved with going through the school is terrifying. Like it's some of the like peak survival horror in this game. It is so tense. Like all the lights are out. Like they're just clickers everywhere. Like it's so well done. I think the like run into there is like you're kind of going through the buses. It was like full of clickers everywhere. Like it's such an expertly done story. I think Bill's kind of relationship with other characters and obviously his partner is super well told, and again done in just kind of a small flickers and fragments. And then to something Trev had said earlier, playing through it again, one thing that stood out to me was, how short Billstown actually is. Like, I had always knew that it wasn't, like, a giant, super long section, but, like, you can get through like, it's not very long, even by, like, the standards of Summer. Like, you're in Pittsburgh for far longer than you spend in Billstown. And it's just such a great, I think, part of the game. Like, it's also one of the first instances where, like, the color palette of the game really opens up, right? And, like, you get, like, the golden rays of, like, the setting sun when you first get there, and, like, super vibrant greens, and, like, just colors are everywhere. I think after kind of how bombed out and drab Boston is, it's a super kind of welcome change of pace. And I feel like for me, playing through The Last of Us, the prologue happens and it hits such a high note, and then I actually really like the stuff, like kind of hunting down Robert, and then I feel like after that the game takes a bit of a lull. Like, I like Tess, but I think we're kind of slowing down a bit, and then it's when you hit Billstown again where it really kind of ramps back up again for me. And yeah, it is such a great character, I think, such a great location.
There was a sequence in Boston that I had, like, when I came back to it, I'd completely forgotten about, basically, and that was the whole thing when you're in, like, the museum, and where Tess eventually gets bit, basically. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, I had completely, like, blocked out or forgotten about this, like, quote unquote level of the game, and and I think so, like, that is one of the areas where there is just a little bit more fluff than maybe there needs to be to kind of keep the story moving along.
Like, that, the thing for me is that I think we'd probably all agree that Summer is the weakest season of the game, and
It's also the longest.
This is my thing. I think that's part of it too, right? Like, I think fall, winter, and kind of spring all have very clear kind of thematic notes they're hitting, and kind of they're centered around, like, one or two big kind of, like, things. And summer is essentially, like, 5 different things happening at once, right? Because even Pittsburgh is, like, 2 or 3 different sections when you add in, like, it's just, like, area, and then, like, the city, like, the suburbs right after that. And it's just so big. And I think it's the only time in the game where there are moments where I'm like, this isn't as tight as some of the other stuff, right? Like, I think spring, fall, and winter are all, like, just, like, perfectly paced. Like, they're so well done. And then summer is one where it's, like, Boston is just, like, maybe a little bit too long, right? And Pittsburgh is, like, a little bit too long. And I think those kind of moments, right, where it's never bad. Like, no matter what, like, what you're playing is still, like, really great. But it's just like, all right, this is, like, we're still here, right?
Yeah, I think it speaks to one of the things that I had talked with you about, again, kind of off air at some point, is that you're really the first person that I've ever, like, talked about this game with that talks about the game in terms of seasons. Whereas I always think about the game in terms of, like, the locations, and I think of it in my mind, Boston, Pittsburgh, Wyoming, and then, like, Colorado, and kind of so on and so forth. In large part, I think, because the seasons are definitely get set up when you get to fall and winter. But even, like, I can't even remember if there is like a spring kind of thing that happens to, like, introduce you to now we're in spring.
It's Ellie
so
looking
much.
at the deer.
Oh yeah, Ellie looking at the deer.
Yeah, on the highway when like that's how
Okay.
spring starts,
Yeah,
from,
yeah.
like,
Okay,
the winter,
gotcha.
how she had killed the deer to begin it, kind of thing.
The image. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's like I just always think of the chapters of this game more in terms of, like, the locations we're in as opposed to the setting. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that the first half of the game is summer, basically.
Yeah.
So it feels weird to then, start attributing it to, like, we've gone to so many different places in summer that when fall is basically just Wyoming and winter is basically I guess fall is Wyoming and Colorado, right? And then winter is basically just Davidstown, and then spring is the rest of the game.
Just Salt Lake City, yeah.
I thought it was kind of weird how
just-
it's paced out like that, but just because it's like the seasons get progressively shorter and, like, there's, like, less
Yes.
going on.
Yes. Every
Yeah.
season of the game is a little bit shorter than the one before it. I mean, not even a little bit. I mean, like, there's big jumps, but yeah, they all get shorter. Which I actually really liked. Playing through it again, I think the fact that they, like, I could feel the fact that, these are a bit shorter as time goes on. One final thing I wanted to touch on for summer is because I had noticed it for the first time, or maybe I noticed it 6 years ago and then just forgot it because it's not like a super big deal, is the fact that when you're in Boston, you like pass through like a Firefly headquarters, or you might be like where you drop Marlene off, or something involving the Fireflies. You're in like where they used to be at. They're just like framed like pictures of Utah that have kind of fallen on the floor, and then one is still hanging. And I think it's like a really nice way to be like, this is where you're gonna end up, but like you would obviously have no idea. You just think it's a picture of Utah on the fucking like wall. And it's like, all right, cool. But like knowing, oh, that's actually where the game ends, and that's actually where they are going, is like one of those really small, like really cool touches that Naughty Dog is great at doing.
Yeah, I definitely didn't catch that. One of the things I caught that I thought was maybe like one of those things where they like patched this in as an update, as a tease for part 2, was one of the movie posters. It's actually like the movie that you can like have an optional conversation around with. It's like something like Dawn of the Wolf or something. It's very clearly like their parody of like Twilight, but like replaying it through this time, it was like Dawn of the Wolf Part 2, and I was like, oh, was it always Part 2, or is that something that they like patched in a stealth update or something to like now that Part 2 of Last of Us has been announced? And no, it was pretty like at least going back to like the original collectible walkthroughs and stuff, those videos, it was always Part 2, so it was probably just like, you know, their parody of what New Dawn Part 2 or whatever it was. But it's still just like interesting, especially when you play Left Behind, which is, yes, a prequel to like the events of this game, but not a prequel to like the world ending. The movie poster in that is only just the it's Dawn of the Wolf or whatever. It's not a Part 2. So it's like, wait, was this mall just playing that like really, really late, or what's going on there? But so yeah, that was just one of the things that like leapt out at me, just in terms of coming to it now with Part 2 of Last of Us kind of like on the horizon. I was like, oh, was that like always an Easter egg that was in there? Or, no, it was probably just New Moon Part 2.
I really appreciate that you guys were like deep diving Easter egg hunting, and I was just walking through a bead curtain back and forth like, this is amazing.
On that note, we will switch to fall. And Trev, what were your favorite moments from that season?
So yeah, I mean, like this season is one of those where I'm like, I don't even know if I really have a favorite moment here, because it's basically just Tommy's place, it's the ranch house, and then it's going to the campus. I mean, I guess I'll go with the campus just because how the campus ends is such a like stark, like, oh, I definitely did not see, you know, that coming with Joel being impaled by rebar. But also just how the campus even opens up is they've clearly been riding Callus. They've named Callus, and you know, it's there's a nice little moment there where Ellie, like, clearly Joel has been explaining football to Ellie, and Ellie's trying to like explain it back, and because clearly the conversation was, this place was known for its football, and, you know, go Bighorns or whatever, and just kind of I guess a lot of like the storytelling that happens throughout the campus, both in terms of, you know, the interactions that they have now that they're, you know, they had their big blah at the ranch house, so they're on much better, much happier kind of terms. Joel is not like trying to pawn Ellie off anymore at this point. So like they're able to kind of have pushed past that element of their relationship. And so you get moments where, you know, Joel talks about having wanted to be a singer, and Ellie talks about, you know, if she'd had her way in a clicker world, it would have been she wanted to be an astronaut. And so you just have like a lot of nice little character moments in there. And then also the notion that this is another area where I has some of my favorite audio logs, in that in the facility there you have kind of an audio log which mirrors absolutely. I tweeted about this like the other day. There's an audio log in there talking about, you know, this guy's like oh, we shouldn't, like, yeah, they told me to put down you monkeys, but who had to deal with more than you guys did? So I clearly don't want to do that. We infected you. We're testing the disease on you, and then like one of them bites him. And he's like, oh fuck, and seeing like almost an identical story happening in the real world of like COVID monkeys, break out of a lab or something like that. I tweeted out basically this was almost literally an audio log from Last of Us Part 1. So like the hubris and it's a very stereotypical kind of thing of like, let's give the animals the leeway and the freedom that they deserve, being what causes this guy to probably eventually die and turn and whatnot and get his comeuppance. And then just that being tied to the notion of like the monkeys that you saw roaming the grounds, and Joel saying like, good thing we didn't like go in for a closer look with those guys. Just kind of like I like how that it really kind of ties all of those little beats together. But then how it ends of Joel getting pushed off and the rebar going through him, and then you having to kind of get slowly drug out by Ellie throughout the rest of that place. That's a standout sequence for me. I mean, I don't know if you guys are going to dive into Tommy's place, but just it strikes me as more of a compelling kind of section of the story than the Tommy stuff.
I'm curious too. I mean, I obviously know Frank's side too because of him being spoiled. But when you first played the game, did you think that Joel was potentially dead when you played through this game the first time, getting to that sequence and kind of how it opens in Winter?
I don't know if I thought it was like, oh, it's an interesting thing that I'm going to go and play as Ellie now, but I feel like it was too strong of a cut without like giving me kind of the closure on what had happened to Joel, that I figured he was probably still alive somewhere and I was going to get to him. And you get that reinforced pretty quickly when she immediately asks for medicine, that he's okay, or that he's in dire straits, but he's still alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess there was probably a very like rational moment in my head of like, well, I don't think they would have, I don't think they would have put that much into this game to switch it halfway through, and have us play as Ellie the rest of the game. I feel like it's very rare you see kind of that level of like resources put into, how one character plays versus how another character plays. So I figured I was probably going to come back to playing as Joel at some point, just from a very like rational, pragmatic sense, that I didn't I figured Ellie was definitely having to kind of like pick up the slack now, but I didn't think Joel was dead. At least I don't think I did. I don't quite remember what was going through my mind 7 years ago.
It's been 7 years, yeah. Frank, what is your favorite moments from Fall?
Yeah, I think Trevor definitely was right on with like the university as a whole is good, but especially that moment is like a huge like, oh fuck moment when he just like gets pushed over the railing and then just gets like impaled. And but I do I guess to go into the opposite end of what we kind of haven't dive too deep into is like I do like the part with Tommy's place, like, and I like the reintroduction of Tommy, because like I do like Tommy in this game. Like I know he's not really there for most of it, but I really like with like what they try to go for his story, or at least what I pick up on is that he's almost like, I guess I don't want to say like kind of a fuck up, but he's definitely not like, I feel like he doesn't have his head on as straight as like Joel does, like because they talk about how he was like running with the Fireflies, like trying to find a cure, like he's like doing all these other things where Joel just wants to like survive and live in this world, and Tommy's trying to like fight for a better world and like do these different things.
It's interesting for me, like I almost wrote a piece years ago, I guess now, about the fact that like the dichotomy between Tommy and Joel, and how like, again, another instance of like Tommy is your hero in this game. Like Tommy is like again the guy who would be the hero if this game was kind of a more traditional kind of classic hero based story, and Joel would be kind of the bad guy brother. Like Joel is the one like based on their exchanges yet again. It's that thing of like again, Tommy's one who has like nightmares and has guilt about probably being involved in the hunters, whereas Joel's unabashed, like, I saved us, like we survived, and Tommy's like, it wasn't worth it, like it was not worth it. And like Tommy's one who went and worked with the Fireflies while Joel never did. Tommy's one who has like this compound and has built a life and has a family and a wife now, whereas Joel is still running and gunning. Maybe with like his relationship with Tess, you could argue something happened there, but like is very much still like just kind of by himself. But never like found a city, right? Like they go back to Tommy's place at the end. Like Tommy to me is constantly like kind of like the moral compass within Joel, and I think it's not an accident that when they had a big blow up and fight, they basically went on opposite sides of the country, and Tommy, you could argue, kind of flourished, and Joel is just barely surviving out in Boston.
Well,
And
I feel like Tommy grew up, like, because he's like, I like, yeah, because he not only did he like help found this community, he's like, Joel, I have a family now, like I'm not just gonna go
married,
out there, and like he's like, I have things I care about, and Joel's just like this lone gunman out in the world.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I think, so I actually like Tommy's. We'll get to it later on in the section. But like Tommy's one of my favorite characters in this game, and I would say seems likely we'll get more of him in part 2 as well. Like assuming that's still the same compound they're at. And yeah, I mean, I love Tommy. I think he's such a cool character to see. Again, both in the beginning of the game, in the middle part of the game, and then obviously you don't see him, but like you see they're going back to his place at the end of the game, and his just relationship with Joel throughout it. And so for me, like my favorite part of Fall my favorite section of Fall maybe is ultimately the campus, because the campus is one of my favorite parts of the entire game. I love everything about that section. But like my favorite moments of Fall unquestionably happen in Tommy's section, right? Like I think Joel and Ellie's fight is brilliantly done. Like it is absolutely heartbreaking and so sad on both ends, and I loved everything about their kind of fight and blow up. And just as much, like I loved the fact that they have their blow up, Joel kills a bunch of guys at the house, and then they go ride, and the fact that like basically not a word is said, and it's just them riding until it gets to that cutscene as they kind of overlook Tommy's. And again, Joel like wordlessly decides like he's gonna stick with Ellie, and that whole sequence of him like taking Ellie and giving the other horse back, like as another moment like that made me tear up, being like, holy shit, like this is such a well done, tiny, quiet moment with like very limited dialogue. And I think the change that kind of happens in Joel is so well done, right? And those are, to me, are some of the most important like character notes of the entire game happen in Tommy's section there. Campus wise, it's just it's great.
Yeah, that's one of those. That was one of those moments in the game. There were like two really standout ones where I was like, oh, I thought that was like a way longer sequence than I remembered. One is when Ellie kills the first guy, when you're basically being drowned in Boston.
That's
like,
what
and she shoots him and basically has that like, no, I thought like, no, hey, how about like, thanks, man, it was him or me or whatever. Like that in particular, that scene, I just remembered being so much longer. So like it felt so short and so quick and in and out. And you get a little bit more when like he gives her the rifle and stuff, and puts her in the sniper, that kind of like concludes that scene. But that was one that like just felt way shorter than I remember. And then the other was the argument you kind of just mentioned in the ranch house. Like I remembered that scene between the two of them being just like more drawn out than it is, because it's really like you have a couple very iconic lines in there of kind of Ellie, talking about how everybody's left, everybody except for you, like that line that Ashley Johnson delivers absolutely flawlessly and perfectly, and then the Joel response being like, "You're not my daughter," or "You're walking on some mighty thin ice." Yeah. Like those lines are like the lines I remember, and like going back and seeing that scene again, it's like, oh yeah, and they're like maybe those lines are the lines I remember because there wasn't a lot more there to them. It really was just kind of like in and out, and it's very efficient and very effective storytelling. It's just I felt like, coming into it, I was like, oh, I just remember that being longer, and I thought there was more to the dynamic between the two of them there than we actually get in that moment. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that like absolutely like I absolutely echo the sentiment, and like a lot of the sentiment and the relationship that we see between Tommy and Joel in the dam is very powerful stuff. But just I guess like because it's not the central dynamic of the story, I end up resonating still a little bit more with the stuff that happens at the university in terms of like favorite elements of this chapter.
I do want to give a shout out to when Tommy is talking to his wife about how he's going to take Ellie, and Joel's kind of sitting from a distance, and like Ellie walks away, and then like they start walking towards Joel, and he just goes 3, 2, 1, here we go, and she starts yelling at Joel. It's like such a great like moment of him just like understanding what's about to happen. And clearly haven't had this conversation like multiple times, like people who were involved with Tommy over the years. But yeah, like fall for me is like, I think such a great season. It's like weird to think about, but like it's also like the last season of the game where like Joel and Ellie are like still kind of their normal selves. Because after this, so much happens to each one of them. Obviously, first Joel in winter, and then kind of Ellie in spring. That I kind of really enjoyed going back to it in that way too. But like this is kind of the last time where we're just all going to kind of be not completely just damaged people, physically or like mentally. And it's also I think some of the most beautiful like shots and scenes of the game, just like graphic wise, occur in fall. Like it's such a beautiful palette, and like still I think part of the reason why like the campus area is one of my favorite sections of the game is just like I think it's gorgeous. Like the way that they light that campus up and the way it's like set during like that kind of time of day like is so well done. And one of my favorite like small things that I noticed playing this game is how the usage of like daylight and like the time of day over time, like as you spend time in the air, like it'll actually like the actual day will like start to slowly change over time too. And I noticed that in particular during like the campus section where you get there and it's like beautiful. And like in particular the shot of you like riding up a little bit into the campus section and like overlooking like the entire like kind of plaza atrium area of the campus, and just like sunlight pouring in from like 4 different angles, and it's just like amazing. It's so beautiful. And then from then on, like the day starts to kind of keep going, and it gets darker and darker and cloudier and cloudier and cloudier. I really enjoyed just kind of watching it unfold until by the end, like it's just like black outside basically in terms of like the clouds. But yeah, fall is great. I mean, it's easily one of my favorite kind of sections of the game, I would say.
Before we move on from fall, I did have one question. I was wondering how you guys felt.
Give it to
like
me.
When they go break off and Joel goes to talk to Tommy, and I forget Tommy's wife's name, but she goes to talk to Ellie.
Maria.
Oh yes, yeah, thank you. In that conversation, she basically like blows up Joel's spot and just tells Ellie everything about Joel that like she didn't know, and was like, "This is Sarah, and she got killed," and then whatever else she tells him. What do you guys think the reasoning is there? Like she's just like, hey, this is something you need to know about this guy, or like is she just trying to start shit so they leave and like they leave Tommy alone?
I mean, my take is especially because of like how quickly like it all like especially like me playing through it and just kind of rushing through. I was like, okay, she covered a lot of stuff in the very brief amount of time that Tommy and I were like touring the dam or whatever. So like when Ellie comes back and says, here's all the things that Maria told me, it's like, okay, yeah, like it's for the plot, the sake of the plot, and to have that conversation between Joel and Ellie more than anything. So like I've never really put too much thought into like what Maria actually goes into and what the motivation behind that are, because I just kind of recognize that like they didn't have much time for her to have really told her a whole bunch of stuff there. So it's really like they told Ellie just so Ellie could have the conversation and know about Sam and know like that Sam existed and know that Ellie is now a surrogate Sam. Like that's for the sake of that conversation that happens in the ranch house more than anything else, really.
It's one for me where, I mean, really all they had to say was Joel's daughter died. I mean, that's all. I mean, that's like really like all she had. And then like, here's a picture of her kind of thing. And that was it. Like all because like in the fight, ultimately, all she says is like, I'm not her, like I'm not Sarah, like I'm not gonna die necessarily like her kind of thing, and that's it. Like, so I think, and that's A, and B is the fact that like, I think
even that though, like even the picture, it's like, okay, but Tommy had the picture, so
Yeah.
how did Ellie get the picture from
he
Maria?
put it back. She like put it back in his little like I think the thing for me is that like, I think it's less like a sinister thing, like you were kind of like asking about Frank, and more just her being like, I think she would have naturally assumed that if this person and Joel just traveled across the entire country, Joel probably would have said at least one thing about his daughter. And so I think it was less her like starting shit, and more her being like, you remind me of like whatever, like you look a lot like Sarah kind of thing. And she's like, who's, and then it's like they go from there kind of thing, or whatever like that. Like, and also like Trevor said, it was to set up this really great character moment later on in the section as well.
I was just kind of curious because like I definitely think you guys are right. Like I definitely think it's one of those things that like needed to happen so they could have those moments and really move the plot forward in that way. And I do think it's another thing where it's like based on the characters they set up, Joel would never really like sit down and dive into it necessarily. So it is kind of something that's like forced upon him to like pay attention to. But it was one of those things that just kind of like stood out to me in a weird way. And then even like what Trevor said with the photo thing, because I feel like everything else is so like perfect and seamless. That was just a really weird thing to me where I'm like, you just did this because you needed to get to B. Like you needed to do A so you could get to B.
I mean, yeah, because we don't even know that she has the photo until
spring.
We take over her. No, until well, I mean, you can examine it in her pack in winter.
Oh,
so,
can you?
like,
Yeah, Saturday.
Yeah, so it's in her belongings in winter, and she even will comment and say, "Oh, I meant to give Joel. I meant to give him this," or something like that. So like, it's introduced, and then yeah, it ends up being like, oh, it's weird that like they went all the way to the university, to the campus, and she didn't give him the picture, kind of thing. So yeah, it's again it plays more into it's a setup for moments that you will get, more than maybe like it's the, in my opinion, it's like the clunkiest little bit of storytelling that Naughty Dog does, but you know, it's still a very small bit of clunky storytelling compared to the rest of the game.
Yeah, because I don't even mean to like nitpick it or anything, but I just think it really shows the quality of everything else that I'm just kind of is like a weird thing to me where I'm like everything else is so, it makes so much sense and they put so much like behind it where everything just kind of lines up. And then even like you were saying too, they didn't do like the thing with Ish in the letter because they were like, that was kind of like too convenient. Like we just don't want to like just do things to do things. It wanted to like kind of make sense. And then I was just like, wow, it seems like she really doesn't have any motivation to bring this up and tell her like what happened other than I guess maybe the best point, like kind of like you guys said too, would maybe be, oh, like, you know, it's kind of like Sarah, and then she's like, who's Sarah? And then they just kind of launch into like the whole thing, you know.
Yeah, it's a great moment either way. Winter, I feel like we might be more I would be surprised if we don't all kind of center around the similar moment. Favorite moment from Winter, Trevor? I feel like is pretty. It's centered around one thing, yeah.
I guess, yeah, I'm hard pressed to.
What do you like about Winter? We'll do that. We'll phrase it like that.
As, like,
yeah.
different moments in Winter. I mean, like, honestly, probably my favorite moment of Winter, though, my like very favorite specific moment is undercut a little bit by what happens afterwards, but it's the idea of David having the conversation with Ellie at the campfire about everything happens for a reason, and he introduces the idea that like he's just a guy that kind of has his own community that's trying to, you know, survive in this world. And you know, a few weeks back they got massacred by this guy traveling with this little girl, and now he has found this little girl. And it's one of the things that I've pretty much always thought about the game since it came out, and it just gets reinforced kind of every other time I play it, where like I almost wish, and it's not a, you know, it's not a unique thought. In fact, I knew I was going to bring it up on this conversation, and then also just this last week I listened to Kind of Funny's version of this podcast, and Greg says pretty much the exact same thing I'm about to say, in that I wish David wasn't so purely evil after that sequence. And you know, turns out that his, you know, he's trying to do he's basically trying to rape Ellie and do a whole like bride of, the monster kind of thing or whatever, child bride with Ellie, and they're cannibals and all that stuff. Like I wish it had been more of a gray kind of characterization, because the idea that gets introduced there of they're just trying to make it on their own, they're just trying to survive too, and these two factions of them and then Joel and Ellie kind of just came to a head, and now what could happen outside of that is a very compelling approach to where that story could go from there. But again, it gets a little bit undercut by the fact that like he's almost immediately introduced as like creepy AF and evil and just pure evil and just a very clear-cut bad guy after that. I would have very much liked to have seen him be just more gray than he ultimately is portrayed. But still, like that sequence in particular, that like introduction that Joel and Ellie's actions don't happen in a vacuum, and they are like there are consequences to the fact that they killed a whole bunch of people at the campus, is a very compelling next step of that story.
I do like how
Frank?
I completely agree with you on that, and I do like how, at least from like her perspective, I feel like she really does hold her own against all of these like cannibalistic, terrible people. I'm with you where I wish it was a little bit more gray. Like they really do try to ramp them up into being like these awful people, between him being like a sexual predator and then also like having the fact that they're just cannibals, just kind of like cutting people up and using that for food. But like I do like that, like, because she, she's the whole time she's really like not having taken any of their shit, and like she breaks his thumb, and then she even escapes like completely on her own. Like, and I like the way that they use like the infected bite to like her advantage there, where she's like, look, I'm infected and now you are infected, and then she stabs the dude and like runs away. Like I think that's a great moment.
I think for me, it was funny watching it or playing through it again, and the fact that like that was one thing that I'd forgotten, was that David's group is like the group that you just killed in like Fall. So like getting that moment again, I was like, holy shit. And like just like that whole exchange with David and Ellie at that fire after they kind of fend off all of the clickers, which feels like the most clickers you face in the entire game. And you like sit down, and that whole scene I think is so well done and so well framed, and like just like the bubbling tension kind of build until like it just like suddenly comes and like everything is revealed there. Like I love the fact that everything is revealed there, and then Ellie grabs the gun and David says, lower your weapon, because like his other guys come back and has his gun on Ellie. Like it's all so well done and all so like terrifying, and how like calmly David is kind of talking about everything through, and how like he kind of has the upper hand like with his guy also there, but like just kind of like plays it cool. And it is easily like a standout moment, I think, of the entire game, is just like that conversation between David and Ellie.
It was also just real quick on that. It was also very, like I didn't realize until the credits were rolling that was Nolan North.
Yes.
After 3 Uncharted games at that point, because I hadn't played Golden Abyss. Like the fact that, like seeing his name pop up in the credits and being like, David, who is David? Oh my God, that was Nolan North. And then even coming back knowing that it's Nolan, and just like recognizing that it's just not a voice that Nolan ever does or has done in anything else. It's not, it sounds so distinct from anything else Nolan has done. That it's absolutely like a standout to the fact that, again, I've heard like other people kind of do retrospective things and be like, oh, I didn't realize that was Nolan until this last time I played or something like that.
I mean, David is, I think, kind of one of the more like famous characters in this. I mean, obviously for what he kind of goes through with Ellie, but just like that exchange, I think it's such a highlight of the game for me, really. They're back and forth in kind of like that cabin, but I also want to just give a shout out to like the opening of the game, right? Like, I mean, the opening of the season, where like it cuts to the rabbit getting killed and Ellie hunting for the deer, and that whole exchange. And for me, it was one that I felt basically when I first played it, but even playing again now, like just very uneasy because the first time I'm playing it through, like I don't know what is happening with Joel, so like I'm very just like uneasy about that. And then playing it through now, it's that thing of like I know what's coming, I know what we're building towards, and like the minute David appears, I think just like the feel of the game is suddenly different. Like something is just off, and I think him working with you and him kind of being by your side is a nice way to kind of maybe try to get you to like think differently. But like like just that whole conversation, how like everything is pulled like the curtain back, and then from that point onwards, just everything is uneasy. One of my favorite aspects of Winter also is I love the very cinematic touches that are done here, like the cuts back and forth between like Ellie's section and Joel's section, Ellie's section and like Joel's like point of view is like they're kind of building towards meeting each other again. I think is super well done. To something you had said earlier, this is one of the instances where like in my head there were like 8 of those cuts. Like it would be like Ellie, Joel, Ellie, Joel, Ellie, Joel, Ellie, Joel, like a lot more than it actually ended up being. But I still think they were such a great cinematic thing. Like that was like one of the first times I'd seen the game kind of just like seamlessly cut back and forth in like characters' perspective, and again like a very kind of film-esque way. I think, I mean, obviously like Joel's interrogation, if you even want to call it that, quote unquote,
Torture.
of those two guys is just absolutely, I mean, it's just incredible to watch unfold. And I think again, kind of that darkness boiling within him and that rage boiling within him over anything that he's trying to protect.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Winter is great. I mean, again,
And then, I mean, the very end of it, of course,
Yeah, I
also
mean, it's-
very iconic.
Yes.
The just like it's like David is very much the only like true villain of the game, and
because you
really
never
the only
see like
true
a
like
hunter
boss
bad
fight.
guy. Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
true boss fight of the game, in that you have to like stealth around the diner or whatever to sneak up behind him and do the typical like, oh, you got to get him 3 times, and that's what progresses the game forward, kind of trope. And the way that ends with just Ellie just brutally going to
Jesus, yeah.
town on his head with a machete and stuff, and like you get like one scream out of him and he's gone, like, and she just continues to hack away at him. Is like you don't see a lot of it, but it's incredibly gruesome, and seeing like what we have seen of like the Last of Us Part 2 trailers, and admittedly I haven't watched like a lot of them, but like some of those early ones just kind of showcasing like they're doing a little bit more of the show don't tell kind of brutality kind of stuff that like this game, as brutal as it is, has moments like this that like it doesn't show you what David's face looks like after that or something like that or it doesn't show you like David's face while she's doing that kind of stuff, that I'm like, I don't know if Last of Us Part 2 is going to try and do some of that stuff that's going to like, because that would be like, that's what will get me to be like, oh, this is too queasy for me, or I need to step away from this.
It's interesting.
But yeah,
too.
like that moment into Joel coming in and being like, hey, it's me, calm down,
Yeah.
it's me, it's okay
Like-
now, kind of like, ooh, yeah, chills.
It's because I feel like Winter, when a lot of people talk about The Last of Us, is kind of the kind of like climax standout moment of the game for a lot of people. And I mean, again, like playing it back again, it is interesting in a way where like you can almost argue, yeah, that scene with David is in a lot of ways like the climax, and then we're kind of coming back down from that point like the rest of the game. It is such a like it's like it is such a dark season. I mean, almost from the jump, because like you're unaware, you're kind of caught off balance by like what just happened to Joel, and then all the rest of the way through. Everything with the final part with David, I think, and then Joel kind of grabbing her and bringing her down. Like it is just I think a really brilliantly done section of the game. It is not my favorite part of the game, but it is just absolutely expertly done. But we're going to move on to what is my favorite part of the game, which is spring. Trevor, what did you like about spring?
I mean, I feel like spring is the draft moment, and like that is the iconic moment from the game, is the draft moment. But I will kind of balloon that out to really the whole introduction of spring up through the draft moment, because you do you immediately get introduced to the dynamic has changed.
Something's not right with Ellie. Yeah,
Ellie is definitely dealing with some serious PTSD, in that she's distant. She's not responding to Joel. Joel is being the most open and friendly he's been like the entire game, trying to open up to her and all that kind of stuff, and you get kind of the great subversion to the mechanic of boosting Ellie up to drop a ladder or something that we've seen so many times throughout this game that Joel goes to do that and she's just sitting over on a bench and completely aloof and out not paying any attention or not like in her own head kind of thing. And then that's immediately replaced by like her excitement and for the giraffe moment. And you kind of chase her and it's shot in a way kind of going to what you've been talking about earlier about like the visuals. Like it's shot in a way that like I never thought that Ellie's in danger. She's running from something. She's clearly running to something. And it's not until I never noticed it before this, but if you're like quick enough, you can see the shadow of the giraffe. Like
I hadn't noticed that ever until this time.
Well, before you run into it, kind of thing. You can see like the shadow of a giraffe's head, on your way over to it, and even at some point, I think you can see like the body of the giraffe before you get to the room where you can actually pet the giraffe. And so I thought that was really cool. But like you don't catch that the first time around because you're probably playing it slower and you're not like rushing. You're not running through everything to get to Ellie in that.
And you also don't know what to expect either. So even
exactly,
if you get to the shadow, you'd be like, I don't know what the hell that is. Like it just It's funny for me because so like obviously you mean like everything from I think the opening of this season all the way through the end of the draft moment is arguably my favorite run of the entire game. But it's interesting, like I think you touched on kind of the role reversal of Joel and Ellie. It's also something I noted playing through like this time was the fact that it is the only time in the entire game where Joel is just talking about Sarah out loud to Ellie. Like he's just mentioning Sarah and talking about like, oh, Sarah, like this, Sarah did this too, kind of thing. Like he'll mention her name a few times in Spring, where even after Ellie knows about it, he doesn't talk about her really to her in just like a casual gameplay setting. And here he is, and I think for him it's like even more like after she essentially saved his life, like the connection that like she's essentially just like Sarah, like she is Sarah to him, kind of like in terms of like how he feels about her, is only even more strengthened and solidified. And so to get through this, like the obvious PTSD that she's suffering from, the obvious kind of trauma that she's just had to undergo with everything involving David, to then kind of run up to, chasing after whatever she's going after, seeing the giraffe, is I think such a like beautifully done kind of 15-20 minutes maybe, and like
even before that, I just want to highlight one of the optional conversations that you get at the beginning of this level is like her staring at a plane on like a plane advertisement on the side of a bus.
Her dream,
and she talks about this dream of being on a plane that was crashing, despite the fact that planes have never flown in her lifetime. So she would never know what that is like, and just like that is absolutely like a dive into the psyche of what's going on in her head. That like
the pilot's gone and she tries to fly it and doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah, like the first time I played through this game, probably the first couple times I played through it, I didn't play through it with like I was probably like looking for that conversation to try and get all of the collectible conversation things. Versus this time where I was like playing through it and I like really listened to what she's saying in the context of that she's saying it in. I was like, oh yeah, that's like heavy shit. And so it this time around ended up being like one of the optional conversations that really stuck with me more than anything else.
Yeah. I think, and like obviously I could do a whole thing on like the giraffe scene and check out numerous things I've written at Irrational Passions, but like, like that, I've talked before, maybe, I can't remember if it's on a podcast, just like to people about the fact that like when I first played this game the very first time, I thought the end of the game was the giraffe scene. Because the way that it ends, where like you're basically in the doorway with Ellie and you're kind of having your back and forth, and are you sure you really want to go through with this? And then her kind of she gives her response and kind of ends with like, it can't all have been for nothing. And then she like walks through, and there is like a moment where like it's just like dark for like a half second longer than like most cutscenes I feel like were. And I was like, oh, like then that's the end of the game is basically what I had thought. It was like it ends on a very ambiguous note of like, we can all. And to be fair, the game still ends ambiguously, but like not that ambiguously. And like in my mind, it was like, oh, it's like this was basically just like an epilogue, and then it just ends, and you don't know if you meet them or not. You don't know if you see the Fireflies or not. You don't know if they're there, if they're all dead. What like it just ends. And so every time I've played the game since then, in my mind, it's like this is where I thought it ends, and I've gone back and forth whether or not like I like that as an ended more or less. But like unquestionably, like it's interesting because what comes post giraffe scene is still like excellent, but it is the moment where like Joel, I think, becomes the Joel that we like people really talk about him becoming. And like that giraffe scene is like the last time where like he's like, all right, he still has something in here with him, and like it, I think I do. I really like the ambiguity of the game ending there. Of like it giving you like this moment of like, here is something just arguably the most beautiful thing in the entire game, the most like awe-inspiring, the most like wow, like I didn't see that coming moment in the game. It kind of helps lift Ellie up a little bit, and then it just ends, and you like don't really know anything else that happens. I think there is some sort of kind of beauty to that, but like, I mean, unquestionably, like the giraffe moment, the giraffe scene in The Last of Us is my favorite scene of any video game ever. I think it is like the most beautifully, like just beautiful looking, graphic wise, thing for me personally in the game. But also, yeah, just like the hardest emotional punch of any game. Like it is just like so well done. It's such a beautiful moment. Like it is just like a perfect moment in the game, I think. And I'm 6 years later still just like tears in my eye. Like you sons of bitches. Like it's just, yeah, it is really, really, really quite perfect. Like it is my favorite moment of the game. My favorite moment, I think, exchange between Joel and Ellie, because even to this final moment there, like I think you see what makes each character who they are, right? With Joel's final exchange of just like, are you sure you want to do this? Like even at the very end of him just being like, you don't have to do this. Like you don't have to be this like altruistic and this like selfless, and we can just go back. Like we can just leave. Like his concern being Ellie over anything else, and Ellie just being like, there are more important things than just like that everything we've done has to be for a reason. Or like all this trauma, all this pain I've suffered, all this loss I've incurred has to be for something. There has to be like a greater reason behind it. And I love that you kind of see who these people are in both positive and negative ways. Like you see how much they clearly care and love for each other, and also like what makes them who they are. And I think also what makes that final kind of 45 minutes to an hour of the game so heartbreaking, and in particular Joel and Ellie's actual final conversation so heartbreaking. Yeah, and the giraffe scene is, yeah, it's perfect, and I love it. I think something I want to touch on is actually not the like exact ending, but the final scene with Marlene in like the garage of the like Firefly headquarters, and how I'd kind of maybe forgotten the fact that even that cuts away ambiguously for a second, right? Where like it cuts away, like you don't have to do this, like you can still like do something good, essentially. And then it cuts to Joel driving in the car, like, and you don't know if Ellie's there or not. Like, I kind of love how many chances this game gave Joel to do the right thing, and how he just kind of couldn't do it. Made even better by like the audio logs you can pick up in the Firefly headquarters from like Marlene herself, talking about how much she does care about Ellie, and how like the promises she's made to Ellie's mom. And I think the final exchange between Joel and Marlene, and including like the actual moment where like he shoots her, obviously they go cut away whatever to him in the car with Ellie, and then it cuts back to him just like walking up in point blank shooting her in the head, like you would just come after us. It's just chills. Coming back to this, I like there were many times like when I was playing through, I was like, oh yeah, like Marlene could be a factor in Last of Us Part 2. I wonder how that plays out. And then like
because I had completely forgotten that he just like completely kills her. At the end of the game.
Just blows her head off. I mean, it is the one moment where it's like even more than the scene of him like torturing those two guys. Like it is a scene of like the most brutal I've seen Joel, of him just walking and point blank being like, "You'll just come after us," and he's just killing her point blank. Is such a brutal like exchange and scene. And again, like it is that one for me of a lot of this playthrough, I feel like, is seeing a lot of the darker aspects of Joel from just like the very beginning all the way to the end. And it was one for me of, again, like, I don't think Joel's the villain of the game by any means, but like it's that thing of like unquestionably Joel is like kind of a bad guy. And like it's interesting too, because I feel like for 7 years, I feel like a lot of the conversation around like at the end of the game and like what Joel does, you hope people be like, oh, like once you become a parent, or like a lot of the parents I know like have like different opinions on it and like don't like said they would have done the same thing. And like I got to the end of that and like, I mean, obviously I am not a parent, but like just watching it again, it's like, I don't know, like that's a lot of death that I mean, like that is like the one thing where like get into the end of the game in the hospital is the moment where it's like Joel's unhinged here. Like Joel is just like completely just like beyond any sort of reason. Like he's driven by like pure like fury basically in that final hospital sequence. Like it like even like the kills he has just like feel more like brutal and primal. Like he's just completely consumed by this quest to kill everything in front of him to get to Ellie. And it is just like, it is like the one where like, this is terrifying in the opposite degree for like people that are like, and it's interesting to hear like the chatter of like the soldiers, like the Fireflies before you kill them, where they'll be like, there's just like some fucking lunatic out here just like murdering, like they're just like, even they're like, what the hell is happening here? Like they like the chatter on the radios that they'll have with each other is like really interesting to hear as well.
Yeah, there was a moment, and I want to let Frank chime in too with some of his thoughts, but there was a moment in the hospital this time around where I was like fully, like knowing where the story goes, I was fully like role-playing Rampage Joel. Mm-hmm. And there was a moment in the hospital where like you clear one area and like on your way to another area, there's basically a makeshift barricade that you can kind of hide behind, and some people will like run past you because they didn't see you. If you're hiding, they'll run past you, and you could completely just keep going. And playing full on Rampage Joel, I'd basically just Molotov them from behind just to just so they would die. Mm-hmm. And again, kind of like playing the like leave nobody behind.
Yeah.
Because that's the mindset I think he's in at that moment.
Frank, what are your thoughts?
I feel like I don't have much to add about this section in particular. Like I do think it is a great section, especially for the ending of the game. I think you guys definitely hit the nail on the head with a lot of the moments. One of the things that like is it weird to you guys like that section in the tunnel between the giraffes and the actual hospital itself? Like there's this entire kind of gameplay section. I get it definitely is the like in between, and it even sets up like she kind of drowns and then they have to bring her to the hospital, and that's how they get separated.
It's the last time that
mechanically mechanically it is the like final encounter with the clickers, and so you've got you've got at least one bloater, maybe two or three even in there. So it's like it's basically like the worst clicker encounter that is being thrown at you right before the massive humans encounter that's going to be thrown at you. So it's again, it's like this isn't a game designed around boss encounters, but that is effectively the clicker boss encounter. So it kind of serves that purpose of being a send off to what for most of us going into this game we thought was going to be the big bads, before it kind of falls into that standard storytelling kind of mechanic of like humans were the real monsters the whole time kind of thing. And yeah, like playing through it this time, like I was very aware of that, knowing how how all of the stuff ends in the hospital, being like, oh yeah, this is the last time I'm going to be fighting the clickers and everything, so makes sense. And thank God that I picked up this flamethrower because that makes that encounter way easier.
It's funny too because, like, get into that section like you said, Frank. Like, I feel like in my mind it's like it's a section that I forget about. Like in my mind, like it is like, all right, we have the first like half hour of spring where it's like kind of the opening all the way to the draft scene, and then we have the hospital. In between is just a section of like, yeah, it is like a literal connecting the two together basically. I like it. I mean, again, like the thing for me, and now we're at the point where we're just kind of like, I think I always enjoyed the clicker fights more than the human ones because I mean the clicker fights are just terrifying. Like basically when given the option, I just choose to not fight them at least more often than not. Especially when they're like full blown clickers because they're just like one hit kill and it's terrible. And so in that aspect, it was like one last kind of really great like survival horror like section of the game. But I think it's one of the weaker clicker sections in the game, maybe. Just because I think it's weird to say like we're almost past that at this point. Like we're like so into like the human story of this game after everything with David and then everything with the Fireflies now. But I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think it's cool how the game, how they reference the fact that like after this, like I'm gonna teach you how to swim kind of thing. Like they kind of reference the fact that like, all right, we're gonna. And to be fair, like Shout out to The Last of Us Part 2. They do. I mean, she learns how to swim in that game, but like it's interesting that like it's funny to kind of go back to that one last time. And like one thing that I do want to give a shout out to is how all in Uncharted like yellow means it's something you can jump on, and how in The Last of Us that is not the case. And I just love the fact that like they'll have like bright yellow shit, and it's just like it's just stuff. It's just yellow things. Like you can't jump in it. You can't do anything. It's not even like interactive stuff at times. It's just like this is just yellow. And I love how they're kind of maybe like making fun of themselves even a little bit with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I one of the things that I think about when I'm, because I also sort of forgot about that section, and it plays into this thing that I encounter a lot of times when I'm very like engrossed in a media, be it a book, a movie, whatever. Like, well, I guess less so movies, but like books and games, I will completely like space out certain things in the rush to the conclusion. Like a very notable example is like I completely missed a very prominent death at the end of Order of the Phoenix, the first time I read Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, where like I was talking to my sister afterwards and she was like, "Oh my God, what did you think about when so and so died?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I had to like go back and read the last few chapters and just had like completely, I was just like so zoned in on like getting to the end of the story that like a detail like that just completely went over my head or something like that. So it's the same kind of thing here where like I'm so, knowing where the game ends, I'm so set on getting from the draft to the hospital sequence that that whole like everything in between there just kind of felt like a blur. And so coming back to it and playing through it again these times was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's right, this is here. And as somebody who doesn't play the game stealthily, who did like go through and kill every clicker that's in the game or whatever, like it was okay, I'm gonna hold up on the top of this truck and I'm gonna launch Molotovs to attract a whole bunch of enemies, or I'm gonna throw a brick down there, it's gonna attract a swarm of the clickers there, I'm gonna throw a Molotov at them, and that's going to burn long enough that by the time like more of them enter like the fray, they will too get burned by like the burning bodies of the others that are still around. And then I will use the flamethrower to take off whoever else is left. So it felt for me almost like this is the culmination. I am finally overpowered. I can finally take out this swarm of clickers. It's in an open space, so like you're not confined, you're not worried about that kind of thing. So it feels like it's almost designed to give you that little bit of like power fantasy for the clickers that you've not had the whole rest of the game, maybe.
I think that's a good point, especially because that's also kind of what the hospital is to me a little bit too. Like I know you definitely can.
Yeah, you get like the AK-47 or whatever you get the assault rifle for the first and only time in this game.
And I love that you also like it's so late you can't even upgrade it or anything. It's just now you have this gun for 10 minutes.
But I mean, it is that thing, especially in the hospital. Yeah, like it is just that thing of like it's like it's weird to say like I felt unstoppable because like there are a shit ton of fireflies, but it is that thing of just like the minute I like start that section, I'm just like I am like like in my mind it's like Joel's gonna kill every motherfucker in this building, and there's nothing that will stop him. And like even playing through like again like it just feels different. And part of that might be because you have like an assault rifle now. Part of that might be because you're so upgraded by the end. Part of that might be because you've like gone through like 16 to 18 hours of this game, whatever. But like I like playing through it again, I'm just like, man, like nothing is gonna stop Joel to get Ellie, and like he just like rampages through this hospital, like killing everything in sight, basically.
And I think that's like an awesome moment, though. It probably is also one of my other favorite parts of the game, especially in terms of like gameplay. Especially because like I feel like I'm one of those people that has like problems with like how it plays a lot of the time. But like that is just like all right, we're going all out. Like we're gonna not stop at any costs, and we're just gonna kill everyone in here. Because the first time I played it, I definitely was like full firefight mode, like shotgun. I remember using a ton, and then also like picking up their like assault rifle that you finally get, and just like shooting all these guys out in like a huge firefight. And then this the most recent time I played it, I did do a lot more stealth, although I find it very hard to do in The Last of Us a lot of the time. But like it was a funnier moment to me too, kind of replaying it, where I still went full we are going to kill everyone in this hospital, but it was more of like a Batman way, where I was just pulling people into the shadows and just like murdering them, and like they're just kind of getting picked off in like smaller numbers. And if I saw like a couple people standing together, I would just throw one of the traps, like a grenade, and just like blow up like 3 people. One of the guys I did notice, like I blew up his entire leg, just exploded off of his body, which is like insane.
Yeah, I mean it's that hospital sequence is just something else. I mean, again, the final thing I mean I guess to talk about is just kind of the final thoughts and the ending. And we can I think combine that with a later section in this, but I do want to talk about like our favorite characters just in the entirety of The Last of Us that are not Joel and Ellie. And Frank, we'll go with you first. Like who are some of your favorite characters or favorite character in this game that wasn't one of the leads?
I feel like there is like I feel like a good amount of these side characters, and I don't feel like a ton of them like resonated with me, and it is interesting that just everybody trying to survive and kind of go about their lives in different ways. But like I said though too, I think one of the people I do like is like another character is Tommy, and like the fact that he's trying to build up a family and like do right in this world.
Yeah, Tommy's great. I mean, Tommy is easily would be one of my picks as well. And I think just kind of the way he compares and contrasts with Joel so well, something I always loved about that character. Trev, what about you?
I mean, I want to give a shout out to Henry and Sam, but
yes.
because I very much love their dynamic. But ultimately, I got to go with Bill. Is probably my favorite kind of side character, because like there are like a lovely bit of layers to him that you get throughout that sequence, ultimately up until kind of even the end of it, where you realize the true nature of his relationship with Frank, and the whatever, if it was a falling out but that they actually had, or if Frank is basically trying to, like in Frank's last letter to him, if he's just trying to be a dick to try and like lessen the pain of him dying. It's completely left up to really the discretion of what you want to take away from it. But like, just, like I love how I love his relationship and dynamic with Joel, and then also just like how immediately he and Ellie are at odds with one another, and he's just constantly like, don't touch my shit. And so he's like, every time getting to like get to play with him and see him kind of thing is a joy, and he's somebody that like I don't know what the plot of Last of Us Part 2 is gonna look like. It's the
next section, but, so yeah, we'll have predictions.
I mean, like I very much hope we get to see some semblance of Bill again in the next one.
I mean, for me, you two probably took my 2 picks. I mean, I love Bill. Like, I love Bill's Town. Like, it is easily my top 5 favorite kind of sections and moments of the game. Maybe top 3. Like, I just think it's one of the most cleverly designed and like creatively done areas in the game. And Bill's just, there's so many layers to that character, and like his just like, I think dynamic with everybody. Even like Tessio isn't there anymore, but like just like his thoughts and like what he says about her. Like Bill is such a great, I think, like one of the few like truly like super lively like kind of like personalities in the game. And then Tommy for just kind of this almost like North Star dynamic he has in terms of like Joel's morality and where Joel should almost like try to be at, but so recently it doesn't kind of hit. That those would probably be my two picks as well. And everything Trevor just said about Bill, I completely echo, which does lead really nice into like our thoughts and what we expect out of part 2. I mean, like it's funny for me, like I don't know if I don't even know if I want Bill in part 2 or not, or like if I think he'll be there, because I'm one of the people who like famously have said that like I don't think this game needed the sequel. We're gonna get it. It's 5 years later. I don't know. Like I'm curious, and also because like I'm assuming, I don't know if they've actually said or not, but like I think the insinuation, at the very least, has been the fact that like that is Tommy's town that you're in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen him in trailers. And
yeah,
stuff.
and so like I'm just gonna assume, so like they would be in Wyoming. So like it would again have to be like a cross country journey, or I guess Bill could have come, west. But like I would love some sort of thing with Bill. I would like the thing that I like both would really love to see, and also I'm like very nervous about, is I would just love some ish thing, just something involving ish, right? Like again, like we'll talk about Left Behind, but like I think for me that is what like my original dream pitch for the Left Behind DLC was basically just like Ish's story told. And we obviously didn't get that, but like I don't even need like Ish's character, because I don't know if I want that even. I would just love like some sort of like letter or some sort of note involving Ish, and not even like saying anything about like his current day status. Like it could be like a letter about like what they did next, like some sort of community they like founded next. So it could be like an area that Ellie goes to, and a letter from Ish is there, and then that's it. Like it's just like one letter, and that's all you get. Like it's just like some sort of like tease of him, and then like I don't know beyond that, like if I need any. I mean, Marlene's dead and Tess is dead, obviously, and a lot of the characters we meet don't make it through the end of this game.
Yeah, Sam and Henry also dead.
Yeah,
so,
it's not
a lot
great.
of it. Like Bill is like one of the few surviving characters that could make an appearance in part 2.
We could get some Force Ghosts, like a look back.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We could absolutely get like flashback of Joel running around with Tess before the events of the first
That
game.
would be cool.
I mean, again, like before we dive too much into our Last of Us Part 2, like predictions, expectations, I could just want to like quickly touch back on Left Behind. And we don't need to spend a ton of time on this because it's obviously just like the quick like 2-hour DLC. But like, Trevor, what are your overall thoughts on Left Behind?
I love Left Behind, and in particular, I love the thing I would want to highlight here is how they use gameplay in Left Behind, both in the past sequence with Ellie and Riley, as well as in the like present day quote unquote sequence. In the past, you get like all of the elements of Last of Us gameplay, but used in like non-clicker combat and stuff like that. And so you get like, oh, let's have a brick throwing contest, and it's just like it's such an innovative and ingenuitive way to like keep those elements of the game alive and vibrant, while telling a story that makes sense, in that Ellie hadn't killed somebody until she ran in with Joel and stuff like that. And then the gameplay in the present day stuff, is something I've talked about many times, in that I love that it sets up what we hopefully will see more of in Last of Us Part 2 of encounters where you've got clickers and hunters that you can pit against one another, because I have so much fun doing that, and not trying to take out one squad or another or something like that. Just being like, okay, I'm gonna throw a brick and just watch and see what happens, because there's like so much fun dynamic kind of gameplay that is created as a result of that. And then, it's certainly saves me on like ammunition if I only have to pick up like the pick off the one or two survivors in whichever side of the faction comes out of the encounter alive. So yeah, like I just love. In addition, like the story is great, absolutely as well, but the way they utilize gameplay and kind of build on the gameplay of the first or the main game to really kind of show what they can do and what ideas they have for where the game can go from there, I think is really fun.
Frank?
No, I totally agree with pretty much everything Trevor said, because I really enjoyed Left Behind. I played it the first time after I had played the original game, and I didn't have as much from Left Behind spoiled for me, so I definitely, at the time, I felt like more positive about Left Behind. I was like, oh, this is really awesome, this was a good time. And revisiting it for a bit, I was like, almost kind of like looking at it from the other angle, where after coming so positively off the Last of Us replay, I was like, why did I enjoy Left Behind so much? Like, and it really clicks when you get to the final part of like Left Behind in the present, when the hunters like drop into the mall. And then I like you in kind of going into what Trevor said, it's all from there. It's just the gameplay section, because you get the hunters by themselves and you can kind of sneak past them or kill them, go through the air vents, and you come out in the department store, and that's where the hunters and the clickers are for like the first time, and you can just throw a brick or a bottle and then they'll just completely fight each other. And then pretty much for I think all the rest of Left Behind, kind of going into those final moments, is just like so standout and amazing that like I definitely was happy to see them do a lot of the innovation kind of with the gameplay there, because I definitely think they finally nailed a lot of the things they wanted to do. And I think it was a really awesome moment. I even love, like, because you clear out the food court area or whatever that is, and you're trying to go back into Joel, and then more people come in, and then they continue to give you like those clicker hunter interactions. And I think that's like, it's just something really awesome. I'm excited to see more of.
It's funny for me because I come at it from a different angle, where it's like since I very first played this game, I guess 6 years ago, probably 6.5 years ago, when the DLC came out. The
DLC came out like well after the original game.
It was like a
right?
year later, I think. I think it was almost like a full year.
So yeah, okay. So but so like 6 years ago, I guess. Then
before the remaster, but like I think it was like the next summer.
I really like Left Behind a lot. For me, I've always said the fact that like I think it's really cool, and I really love the hunter clicker dynamic and gameplay interactions, and I'm excited to see more of those in like Last of Us Part 2. But I've said from the very beginning, and like Trevor knows this, so like I think if I could have done this DLC differently, there would have been no present day stuff, and there'd have been no combat at all. It would have been Riley and Ellie in the mall together, and like and then like their like kind of interaction is like the clickers at the end, obviously, like, so like if you want to call that combat, whatever. But like I'd have had it all be centered right there, because I think Ellie and Riley's story is so well done. It's so great, and I had totally forgotten the fact that at the very end of the game, of like Last of Us proper, Ellie essentially like sets up the DLC that's about to come out too, which she talked about like Riley and her like losing their minds together kind of thing.
Yeah,
I like had blanked that out, but like that is like such a like it's some of the strongest I think writing and like character work of The Last of Us is Riley and them all together, and like their whole experience and their whole kind of dynamic and relationship. And then like the present day stuff I think is all totally fine. Like I enjoy playing through it because I love The Last of Us, obviously, but like I think it's fine. I like, to me, like, honestly, like I feel like the present day stuff and like those combat sequences are ones where it's like they were like, we need to make this more of an actual thing, because right now it's just like a mall simulator, and so I really enjoy it. So obviously it's still very good. And again, like the final sequence where it is like clickers and humans all fighting together is really, really great. But yeah, for me, it would be like the weakest part of the DLC for me.
That's fair. Just as a FYI, it came out February 14th, so it came out Valentine's Day 2014. So about 8 months after original launch, but yeah, before the remaster came out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good date for that
yeah.
too. Like what a great day to
it's
drop
like,
that on Valentine's
I did not
Day.
think that.
Yeah.
So now, yeah, predictions. What would you like a quick kind of prediction expectation thing of what you expect, what you predict you'll see or want in The Last of Us Part 2? We'll open with you, Trev. What you got?
So it's interesting because I remember many, many years ago when our friend Barrett Courtney, back when he still had Bayazona Gamers that he did back before he was at IGN, back before he was at Kinda Funny, he was doing his own site, and he wrote a big thing about like why The Last of Us doesn't need a sequel. And I remember refuting him at the time, being like, I won't disagree that it doesn't need a sequel, but here's a makeshift pitch that I had for a sequel at the time or something like that. And it was something to the effect of, Joel didn't kill everybody. And so word of what happened to the Fireflies and what Joel did to the Fireflies gets out. And Ellie learns about it and basically decides to like take up arms against Joel. And like we see kind of her confront, that the reality of that situation, and like before she's going to sacrifice herself and try and actually like explore and find if she can be that cure for people, she's gonna make sure Joel pays for what he did. She didn't, like, we find out through Left Behind, she didn't really know Marlene all that well, but like she knew Marlene well enough that she didn't want Joel to have murdered her in cold blood. And so that's what I would have wanted to see. And based on what we've seen in terms of like the trailers and stuff, I definitely don't think they go that route. But I do want to see them have to grapple with that dynamic at some point, with the severity of what Joel did. I think it's been 5 years, I guess. Mm-hmm. So Ellie, like the doubts that she has at the end of the game have probably just continued to grow. And Joel probably like slips up and says something at one point that like means the truth is going to come out, and Ellie has to grapple with what that is. Mm-hmm. So like that's an element that I want to see and I want to like experience and look forward to. But in terms of like the broader story, I'm just kind of I haven't really been paying too much attention to what's out there. I certainly haven't been paying attention to the spoilers or anything that went out. So I'm just kind of like along for the ride. Mm-hmm. And really from a gameplay stance, like the things I do want are more of those dynamic encounters and engagements. Mm-hmm. And they prove that they can do it with Left Behind, so I think we're absolutely going to get some of that stuff with Last of Us Part 2, and that's where I think there will be fun. Because I'm trying to think, like, are they going to introduce new clicker types, and there's something now past a bloater that didn't come up, it wasn't introduced in the first 20 years of this outbreak, but now with 5 more years we've got this new type of thing. I don't. Like, it doesn't seem like it would make sense within the world to introduce new enemy types. And then the hunters are just kind of going to be continually, shitty hunters. So, but I guess they have introduced that dogs are now going to be a thing that we have to fight. So, yay. It's going to be, like, I look forward to seeing how they kind of continue expanding on the combat. Because I know whatever the story is going to be hopefully interesting and compelling. Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing that I really hope that they've picked up on that again, I kind of felt coming back to this game from 2013 is that it feels like a game from 2013, and I don't necessarily want to feel that heavy and clunky like I did with Joel kind of going back to this. So I hope that it's, a faster pace and there's just more, I guess, like more maneuverability and more movement to it than the original game had.
It's interesting for me because, see, we didn't even talk about them during kind of our recap of the game, but like the bloaters are the only section I really think where it's like, oh, this is a video game thing. And like, to be fair, like they're also in the game essentially like 3 times, and that's it. Like you never see them in winter. You see them, I think, one time in.
No, there's one in winter. There's one you face off against.
Oh,
right.
In the
endless waves with David.
My
there's
point.
One in Yeah, there's like
one in the
the
campus, yeah.
most horrifying one is the one that's in the hotel when you have to like turn the
Yes.
generator on.
Yes, 100%.
I just dipped the fuck
That-
out of
that's
there.
one-
Like I just turned that on and run.
So this is the thing, is that I was gonna say it when we talked about it, but like I wrote a whole piece back at IP about how like I had a whole story, but like the generator sequence in Pittsburgh in the basement of the pitch black is like one of the most terrifying sequences I've ever played in a video game, because the first like I guess the second time I played through it, like it went totally shitstorm, and it was like they were everywhere, and it was a mess, and like it literally came down to where like there was one bloater left and like a few zombies, and they were all chasing after me, and then like it ended with me smack dab in a corner shooting down the last few zombies and the bloater, and literally with the very last bullet in my gun killing the bloater, and that was the last clicker left, and I had no ammo left, and like I had done it with like the last bullet in my gun, and it was like this crazy story. And then this time I like got everything set up, was ready to go, flipped the switch, and like ran over to that corner and like ran past the door to the exit, and it was like, oh, like I can't like open it, but I want to see like what like dialogue he'll say to be like, oh shit, it's locked. And so like I went to open it, and I just ran out, and then you can't go back in, and I was like, fuck, I missed the entire fight sequence with these guys. So like I inadvertently like skipped the entire fight this time, but no, yeah, because that one was absolutely terrifying, and it was like again part of what made that like 2014 playthrough like so iconic in my mind was like really with the last bullet in my gun. But the two like maybe like 2.5, 3 like quick kind of fire questions I want to ask for you, Trev, before we get to kind of Frank's predictions and like hopes for Last of Us Part 2 is, do you think Joel dies? Do you think Ellie dies? Do you think Last of Us Part 2 ends with some sort of cure being had or some sort of like good news being had in the world of The Last of Us?
So I mean, like narratively, yeah, just Joel probably dies. It's one of those things like I haven't tried to think too. I mean, like actually even that, like even say like yes, he probably dies, but like I don't want him to, because I remember like when the first trailer came out and it just immediately everybody like started theorizing that oh, Joel's dead or whatever. And
Joel's a ghost. Yeah.
I feel like they would know better than to put that in the first thing they're ever going to show off about this game is make something that obvious. So I don't want him to die, but like narratively it probably makes sense. He's probably going to at some point die. And so it comes down to like, is it Ellie that kills him is really like the question I have, that for whatever reason, you know, drives the moment. Like, and like, again, even there, it's like, does he get bit? And so Ellie kills him to put him down or something. You know, then you basically are, oh, hey, like it's just become Telltale season 1, Walking Dead season 1. You know what, like, so it, like, I don't even want to like theorize what could happen, because any number of things could happen, and any number of those things could be compelling based on how it all plays out.
Yeah.
Does Ellie die? Yeah, like I don't know. I feel like Ellie doesn't. I don't see Ellie dying, given that like this clearly seems to be her story. And then does the game end with a cure? I don't think so. I think like what they've continually said that like the first game was about hope, right? And then this game was about revenge.
First game was about love. This game's about revenge.
Right. So the fact that the game about love didn't end with like the cure for humanity, I can't imagine the game about revenge ending with the cure for humanity. So yeah, I doubt it. I mean, and that's the kind of thing like. I mean, the unfortunate trope of like horror or like zombie types of stories is that they pretty much just never are going to end. Like there's never a happy ending in those, because the world has already gone to shit, and the world can't really be like returned from shit without it, not within the frame and the scope of a game like this, I don't think. So yeah, I guess my ultimate predictions there are like, yeah, Joel probably dies, Ellie probably doesn't, and no cure for humanity at the end.
Frank, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I'm definitely excited for part 2, especially after replaying part 1. In terms of like the story stuff I want to see, it's like hard because kind of like Trevor said, like there's like I don't think a lot there. I mean, there obviously is a lot that is going to carry over, but it's not like people. Like I think they're like I don't think we're going to see Bill again, or I think like Tommy and his wife and like that community is like the best we're going to get as like people we've already met. except for the fact that you're gonna like run into fireflies and they're gonna know who you are probably, I'm sure. But I I am curious. I'm pretty much just along for the ride. Like I haven't tried to speculate or really put too much thought into it, but like what's gonna happen or what are they like, what exactly is going on. But I definitely am excited to kind of see where everything goes. And Tommy is also really the only person I want to kind of just like know what happened to or see what happens to. But I don't want anything like, I guess, bad to happen to him. But I'm sure that is probably in the cards. Like I'm sure his whole community is going to fall apart, like tragically. But I'm just taking a guess there. Um, I wouldn't mind. See, I guess I'm with you because I wouldn't mind getting something from Ish, but I don't. Again, like I don't want them to force that kind of thing in.
I just want Ishes to be like environmental storytelling stuff. I want it to be like a letter or a note or something like that. Like, or even like, yeah, like I don't want to see him in the present. Also because like we don't know how long ago, like Ish's story happened. Like it could have happened 9 months before we walked through the tunnels, or it could have happened like 5 years before. Like that's the thing. Like I don't want to see Flesh and Blood Ish. I want like a letter or a note or something like that. And that I think would be really cool and neat. But like otherwise, I don't want actually him there.
And to Trevor's point though too, I think like I think we could get new enemy types, and I honestly I think based on the lore they've set up, I think it does make sense because they kind of establish like the different types of enemies or like the different lengths of time that like it's been mutating people, like the ones who are kind of stuck to the ground and just moan, like they're new, like it's kind of taking them over. The runners are like babies. The clickers are a little bit older. The bloaters are people who've
clickers are a year, I think.
Yeah, and then the bloaters like 5+ years or something.
I think they said 5.
And I think you're totally right that like we're already 20 years in. So like what is 20 to 25 going to do? But I think that's where you can just get into like weird mutations and maybe different places you visit. Like if you, in a weird hypothetical thing, like if you went to the swamps in Louisiana, it probably like mutated.
That's a cool idea.
Like it would mutate differently and it would affect people differently depending on like where you were. So I think there's still things they could pull from and try to do. And I personally would like to see some new enemy types in the universe.
Yeah. I even just thought, like, as you were talking, I was like, oh, and you could also probably have, like, the trope of, like, the military's been experimenting on them or something, and you end up getting, like, new types that the military accidentally created or something like that.
Yeah, that would be awesome, especially if, like, a military base got overrun and there's, like, clickers that are in, like, riot gear and, like, other shit that are now, like, impossible.
God, don't jinx us with that hard. Yeah, that's going to be the fight. What do you think happens to Joel? How do you think the game... Do you think it has a cure ending, Frank?
So yeah, so I do like these questions here, and this is one of the few things I have thought about. I do think Joel is gonna die. I don't know if Ellie's gonna be the one that does it. I feel like she won't, unless it is the kind of thing where like he gets bit and like she's just gonna like put him down, like kind of like the Telltale season 1. But I think he is probably gonna die in this one, and I'm not even saying like I want him to. That's the kind of vibe I get. And I think at the end of the day, Ellie is going to survive part 2. It'd be interesting if she didn't, but I feel like she is kind of like their main character here and probably what they would continue forward with, or even, even if they don't give the kind of ending, like I think it's going to end ambiguously where like she's just still kind of alive trying to survive in the world, and now she's without Joel, and everyone else that she's made friends with in the last like 5 years is now all dead, and she's just like alone trying to rebuild. And no, I don't think they're gonna. I think honestly, all hope for a cure is dead, and that's something I really want them to explore, because I like the idea that it's not that Joel killed all the Fireflies. There's still a lot of Fireflies out there, but he killed the ones that could have made the cure. Like he killed
the doctors.
Yeah, he killed the scientists, the doctors, and everyone guarding them. Like he killed the ones that could have done the cure. And now it's just the remaining Fireflies who know what he did, and like he basically sacrificed humanity for his own personal gain, and that's kind of what I do want to see. And I think they will follow up on that in some of those threads, but I want them to take that angle. I don't want them to take the angle of like, okay, well we had another group of people working on a cure, and we have more scientists and doctors. Like I want it to be like, no, Joel, well, this was a really limited resource, like doctors and scientists and these kind of people, and you just straight up murdered them all. Like they're now permanently gone, and this knowledge is basically dead from the world now.
One thing I also wanted to ask that Frank brought to my mind is and this can just be like a real quick thing. What parts of the country would you like them to explore in part 2? I mean, obviously, in part 1 we go to Boston, we're in Pittsburgh, Wyoming, Colorado, and then kind of ends in Salt Lake City. Where would you like to see part 2 go? Frank, we'll go with you first.
I kind of just pulled like the South and like the swamps of like Louisiana, just kind of off the top of my head, but that could be a really interesting setting.
Sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, if they ended up there, I think you could do a lot of really cool stuff with that. And then even on the complete flip side of that, I think it would be really interesting if they ended up in like California for some reason. Like if you ended up in this place that should be like beautiful palm trees and yeah, like that, dude, that would be fucking amazing. Like the overrun bridge and like there's just like all those like blockades and stuff put up and like all kinds of zombies or clickers everywhere. Like those are probably 2 locations I think would be really cool. And then honestly, even on the flip side, I don't think they're going to do this. I think it would be cool to try to go international, even if they just ended up in like Mexico or something. Like, I just think it'd be interesting to try to go farther out than America. And I know they can't fly, they can't really take a boat probably, but I think there's ways you could probably get them to like another really cool location.
Trev, where would you want them to go?
I mean, so I just from what I've seen, I'm pretty sure I know like where the story is set, so I don't know if you want like I can say what I know, but I don't know if you want like
you can predict outside of that. Then yeah, what you would like to see.
Well, I mean, I don't know how to I don't know how to answer this question because I don't want to like spoil something for you, if and then I don't want to also be outlandish. I mean, yeah, I think it'd be cool to. Well, I will say like it'd be really cool if they came to Arizona just because. I love stories that make their way to Arizona.
So this is actually my thing. Is like when Frank kind of put this question into my head. That's actually where like Southwest America. I think like desert, like canyon things. I actually think could be really cool to explore, right? And like whether it's like Death Valley or like Arizona, yeah. Like I think it's a type of climate that I would find really interesting to how that pairs with clickers and also just like how humanity's obviously still surviving with no air conditioning and like 110 degree heat and like how like that'd be really interesting to see play off too. And B, like, dude, can you imagine Naughty Dog graphically like imagine like these giant like canyons and caverns and like the golden sand like blowing, like it's like Uncharted 3 but on the new generation and with like 10 years progress. Like I can't imagine how good they could make like Arizona or New Mexico or like the White Sands or Death Valley and like Nevada look. And I think it'd be super interesting to see.
I mean, that was one of my favorite elements of like Horizon Zero Dawn is I think they kind of flirt. Yeah, they're a little bit in Arizona by the end of that game. But it's much more like Utah and Colorado kind of areas. But still like just that, like you see kind of the Monument Valley type like vistas and stuff. Is really cool. And like Arizona is an interesting one, speaking as somebody who is here, because like yeah, we're desert, but go 2 hours north and you're in like Payson or Tonto Forest, Tonto National Forest or Flagstaff or something like that, and you're in the mountains or you're in the woods or whatever. So like it's weird because Arizona, I mean, one of the reasons they set up the friggin' biosphere out here was because Arizona does have like a whole bunch of different ecosystems that it can draw from. Ultimately, I don't think the game will head there, but it's a cool setting that I would love to see it, tackle.
I agree with you on that because I do think that would be cool, and because even when you guys brought it up, the first thing that kind of came to mind is I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to see like a community of people hiding out in the old like I don't want to use the wrong term, but it's like there's like the Native Americans who like carved those huts and those houses into like the mountains, like and like it would be really cool to basically just see like a community of people like living just like out in there and like they have like their the stuff they're farming and they're basically just living that like old life like they would have originally had. Like that would be something really cool.
I think so. Yes, put The Last of Us Part 2 in Arizona is the pitch that we all agreeing on here. My kind of answers to the questions of Joel, Ellie, and Akir are essentially, I think it's more likely than not that Joel probably dies in this game, but I've said from the very beginning that I think like the actual like saddest possible ending for the Last of Us series, right? Because I do think this will be the last game they do in the Last of Us. And just for Joel and Ellie's arc at the very least, is the fact that like the saddest ending isn't Joel dying and Ellie just living. It's if Joel lives and Ellie dies. That's the actual saddest possible ending that they could give in the game. I don't know if I think that's what they're gonna do. I think that like all four possible variables of like Ellie lives, Joel dies, Joel lives, Ellie dies, they both die, they both live, are all, I kind of go back and forth on what I think is the most likely and the least likely. I do think, weirdly enough, to a point Trevor made, I think that The Last of Us is a game about love that has a kind of a very bleak ending in a lot of ways. But weirdly enough, I think the game about revenge, that is probably going to be darker and more kind of downbeat and somber and serious and everything, might actually have somewhat of a happier ending. Like whether or not that happy ending involves Joel dead or Ellie dead or them both living, or whether or not it's a cure or something, I think this ending might be a little bit more like comforting than the first one we got in The Last of Us, proper. And so I don't know if it's a cure or something, but I think it will be. I think we will get a happier ending in this game, quote unquote, whatever that means, than we did in the first game.
Do you think we have kind of that Naughty Dog flashback? And if so, like, what do you think the flashbacks in this game are too?
Right. Like, I think most people have talked about the fact that, like, based on the one trailer, that they think you're going to play as Ellie's mom. And me and you've talked a little bit about that. I think it's possible that we get flashbacks involving Ellie's mom. I think there will be probably flashbacks just because it's Naughty Dog. And because I think, again, I talked to Trevor, you about this after we recorded something about how, like, I could see them doing, like, a Godfather Part 2-esque, like, essentially a third of the game is, like, flashback stuff that it's cutting kind of back and forth with, like, present day. About like the rise of the Fireflies. So we have like Marlene and Ellie's mom and Ellie's dad and all these other important figures kind of thing. Like I could, and maybe like Tommy's involved at that point in time. Like I could see all of that happening. I think for me, I don't know. Like I'd have to see how it's done. Obviously, I don't know if I'd want that. I think I would almost prefer, I mean, again, without having, like, the thing in front of me, like, it just being, this is Ellie's story, and go. I will say that I do think at some point in time in this game, you play as Joel. At some point in time, whether it's for, like, 1 minute or an hour or whatever, I think you play as Joel at some point in time in this game, is a prediction that I do think is going to happen. Just in the similar, as in the first one where you play as Joel, but you get, like, the Ellie section. Here, I think it's probably going to be for a shorter period of time than in part 1, but I think you play as Joel at some point in time in this game. And I think the flashback, if we get them, is probably the beginning of the Fireflies, and something involving that.
Yeah, here's the all the things that are running through my head just talking about that. I'm like, oh, like, what if Joel is the one who killed Ellie's mom? Or what if Tommy is somehow Ellie's dad? Like all these ideas of like what happened in the past that like
that's like the fanfic shit I don't want.
Oh yeah,
and I don't think they will.
No, and I don't think they will either. But like those are like the what if ideas that just like flew through my head of like, oh, like the timelines of all those things could absolutely work. Yeah, I don't think they would go that way because I think it is way too like fan fiction-y, but still interesting stuff. Do you think we'll see a lot of kind of the time between the first game and now? Do you think we'll see like moments of that in flashback form or something like that?
I don't. I think I will say this, like when you kind of ask this question, I began to think about the possibility of like, what if like instead of like the flashbacks being what everybody, I think the general kind of consensus among like internet people who are freaking out is like, oh, you're going back in time and playing as Ellie's mom and like the start of the outbreak. I do think it'd be interesting if like instead we get like a flashback or flashbacks, but it is you playing as Joel and Ellie in that interim period. But I think more likely is we get there's no flashbacks in that time period. And it is just like we are 5 years forward. If we have flashbacks, they're from like 20 years ago or something like that. I do think it's basically a 0.1% chance of it happening because of like the scope and complexity of it. But like, I do think it would be interesting if like the flashbacks we get are like bouncing around time periods. So like it is one of like you get a flashback to like begin the game of like it is Ellie's mom and dad like running from like clickers or whoever the fuck kills them. Like they're running from them. They like slam into Marlene, who they like they're friends with obviously, and basically like give like their like baby Ellie to her, and then keep running, and then you like Marlene like runs the other direction, and she just hears like 2 gunshots kind of thing, and then it like stumbles upon their body, or just like you understand that they're dead, and then she kind of goes from there, and then like we have another flashback like of Tommy and Joel and like a Hunter's Click, like how they leave that, like another one from like Tommy, like the flashbacks are like bouncing around like over like the entire 25 years. Again, I don't think we'll get that because the scale of that is absurd, and you have to play as like 4 different main characters in the game essentially. But I think that'd be like a cool one to kind of get like the arc of the entire Last of Us journey. I think realistically, again, you're going to be Ellie's mom, or you're going to be Joel and Ellie, and then I think most of the game is, and I also think it's going to be like 1 chapter, and then you're just going to be Ellie for most of the game, except for, again, when I think you'll play as Joel for at some point in time.
And like I definitely don't want Joel to die. I guess like if it happens, I definitely would understand it, and it'll be like emotionally impactful. I'm definitely down for it, but I'm not like saying I want it to happen. But I really, there's something about the irony, like if he gets bitten and there's no cure.
Yeah. I mean, more than that, like, again, like, Joel is my favorite video game character of all time. Like, I love Joel. It's like, I think the thing that's always annoyed me about when people are like, oh, Joel's gonna die, is that, like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm at the point where, like, again, like, I think it's more likely, I don't know by how much that I think he will than he won't, but just the fact that, like, I don't know, like, I don't want, like, what I don't want this game to be is just, like, kind of a shitty version of Joel, and then he just kind of, like, is like washed out, and like I want Joel to be a presence in this game. Like I want him in this game in like some sort of a big role. And like I would hate if like you're playing as Ellie and then something happens to Joel and he's just gone for like 3/4. Like I don't want Force Awakens where we have Joel at like the beginning of the game when everything is good, everything goes to shit, and then we don't see him again until like the end of the game where like he dies or doesn't die or whatever. Like I want Joel to be a recurring presence within this game. Like I do think Part 2 is going to be much more of a solo story. Like, I think it's going to be Ellie by herself a lot more than Last of Us Part 1 was. But I still want Joel to be a figure in this game because I think he's an important player in the story right alongside with Ellie. And so I want him to kind of be here and get his kind of screen time and get his kind of moments to really shine still.
And I do like the idea though that like I think you're right, and it's something I had kind of thought of too. Is like I think the ultimate way is for Ellie and even Tommy and just like all these other people to meet their end, and Joel is basically like at the end of the day
the last one standing.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's the last.
That's
one
such
standing.
a sad ending. That's the thing. Like what he did ultimately, like because then it's that thing of like to your point earlier, Frank, of like not only did he throw away the only kind of like cure for humanity, but he did it for nothing because Ellie still died and Tommy still died and the community's still far apart, and it's just Joel at the end, and it's like that's such an unfathomably sad ending to The Last of Us, which is part of why like I don't think they'll do it because like whether like I think Neil Druckmann might be like fuck it all, like I'm just gonna be like I'm not doing another one of these games, I'm just gonna kill everybody but Joel, but like a part of me feels like Sony would be like you can't make a game where it's just Joel surrounded by all these dead bodies and it's just grief and sad and like it's too dark, and like it's just because that's a really dark game obviously, but like I do think that'd be super ballsy, and like I would kind of like be into it if they were just like we're gonna burn it all down, because like I know that there's like I think there's some disagreement to a degree, but like I am very much steadfast in the fact that like I think this is the last Last of Us game. Like I do not think Naughty Dog at the very least is making another one of these games. Like I just don't think, because they didn't want to do this one. They essentially got talked into doing Part 2, and so it's like I just don't think they're gonna do a trilogy of these games. I think either way, this is the end of The Last of Us, and like I think they're gonna do something brand new after this, and so like I think whatever we get is what we get, and how this ends, I think, is going to be how it kind of ends. And I find that exciting. Like I'm ready for this series and this saga to kind of come to a conclusion that it comes to, and then for the first time in, I mean, 2 console generations, Naughty Dog does something that we don't know about, like just something completely new that we have no idea about. That's what I would say.
I honestly though, like I'm definitely with you. Like that's an incredibly dark way to go with it, but I honestly think that might be kind of what they're going for here. Like it's just a very dark universe, and I think a lot of people always talked about the ending of the first one as like, oh wow, that was so ballsy, that was so brave. Like the fact that he does that, and yeah, like there's no choice. You know, it's like this is just what he does. This is what the universe is. This is the story. And I think you can easily again get that. I think like it's one of those things. If anyone has the balls for it, it would be Naughty Dog, and if anything, like Neil Druckmann.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think I can totally see this where you play the entire game as Ellie or most of it, and you get to the end of the game, and it is something happens where she dies, and now I guess you are back to Joel, and like everyone is gone,
escaping, yeah, whatever.
And I can even totally see like, and this is where it's going to get like super super dark, but I could even totally see the end of the game is just Joel did whatever he needed to do or whatever, and now he's just completely alone, and he's just like standing there alone, basically just like holding a gun, and then it's just ambiguously ends. Because you're just like, he's just like left alone in this entire world now with no one.
There was somebody who said it at like a few years ago, and I don't know who it is to give him credit to, but like basically pitched this where it is like Ellie dies, like really it's just Ellie would die would be enough, but like Ellie dies and the game kind of comes to a conclusion, and the game is essentially just like it is Joel with a gun in his hand basically, and then like the screen goes to black and you just hear one gunshot, and then credits roll basically, like it's Joel like kills himself kind of thing. Again, I don't know. I think that's very bleak. I don't think we're gonna get that. But yeah, ultimately, I think we're gonna get a happier ending in this game. But I also kind of want to steer the conversation, ultimately around to kind of our final thoughts and feelings on The Last of Us, having replayed it through it now again, and just kind of your final impressions. And Frank, we can start with you and then kind of ring around. What are your final thoughts on The Last of Us, having played it?
Yeah, definitely very positive about it. Like I liked it the first time through. I liked it a lot more the second time through. And I think
that second time,
I think like playing it on the New Game Plus, I think helps a lot too, because I just think like you carrying over I feel like a lot of your abilities, it just makes a lot of things in a way easier, and you're just more powerful. And I think ultimately that makes the game a lot more fun and like a better experience, and something it's easier to get like emotionally involved in, instead of like getting emotionally involved in a cutscene and then getting pissed off in an encounter because it's like super annoying to try to like fight through. That's how I felt a lot of the first time, but then in replaying it, I felt like being stronger and then just getting a much better handle on like how to play the game and try to make it do the things I want. Like I'm very very positive about it. I still think it's an amazing video game, and I think to the benefit of like how strong the rest of the game is, I think that's why some of the things I think are weaknesses stand out so glaringly, is just because like everything else is hitting on such like a perfect level that you get to these like bumps in the road sometimes. But ultimately that's why I'm incredibly excited for part 2, because whatever part 2 does story wise, I think you're just going to get like an amazing game with a great story that's going to be told super well. And I think everything, it looks like what they've done with the gameplay basically fixes every problem I've ever said I have like with this game, is at least what it looks like to me in the minimal amount of like pre-review stuff I've seen. So I'm just very excited to get in there, and I'm also glad you can craft silencers now, because replaying The Last of Us, I was like, why isn't that something you can do? Like just put a can on the end of your gun.
Trevor, Last of Us, final thoughts?
So yeah, one of the questions I had posed to you when we started talking about doing this was trying to articulate like why this game resonates with us, and you know, stands the test of time as like, you know, one of our favorite games kind of thing. And I still don't have like a fully formed thing written out or anything like that, but just kind of based off of this conversation, it is like the stories and really the characters of this story, I think, are the thing that ultimately resonate the most. You know, be it your central core of the father-daughter dynamic between Joel and Ellie, of course, but also like pretty much everybody who comes in and comes and goes throughout the story, be it Bill, be it Tess, be it Henry and Sam, Tommy and Maria, Marlene. Like every one of those characters feels fleshed out and feels important to the narrative that they were trying to tell here. And it's not just like random NPC that doesn't matter. David even, as another one. But then like even above all of that, there is just a great dynamic feel to the combat that we didn't really touch on much of at all. But like the crafting in this game is a fun dynamic, and the fact that you can constantly scrounging for parts to make the things you need to make. Like I certainly hoard, whatever I could, and so I would go and open every drawer and everything like that. But the idea that, and I don't know what's going on like under the hood of the mechanics of this game, but the idea that theoretically you could have those encounters that you were talking about, Logan, where you are down to your last bullet and you only make it through an encounter by the skin of your teeth. Like I even playing through here on like normal mode, I went through like multiple encounters where I was missing the gunshots and whatnot, and I would come down to like the last bullet in my chamber is what took out the enemy.
Yeah.
Because if I'd had to, like, I might have still had more ammunition to go, but if I'd had to reload, the clicker was going to get me and kill me.
Yeah.
And so like that feeling that surviving just by the skin of your teeth is a very fun element of the gameplay. It can be very frustrating as well when you might think you should be doing better or something like that. But the idea that if the like inner workings of the game are working the way that I think they are, that like you're only getting as much ammunition as you need, or you're only finding the supplies that you might need to try and like push through. You and I might find the same bottle, but because I've already got stuff stocked up, I might only get like a quarter of alcohol from that, where you might get a half or something like that. Like that would be really cool if that's what's actually happening underneath the hood. And I've just never like read into or done like the analysis to figure out if that's what's going on. But I feel like that's absolutely how the game makes me feel. What's happening is I'm not getting. I'm getting the supplies that I need. I'm finding scissors when I need to craft a new, nail bomb or something like that, and that makes just the survival nature of the game feel that much more engrossing. So like it's kind of it's working on all cylinders. It is you've got a great story and characters that are kind of carrying you through the plot, but in between all of those moments, which as we've touched on here, sometimes are significantly shorter than we remember, it is the gameplay that is carrying you from moment to moment, and like encounter to encounter, battle to battle, that really helps make this game stand out, I think.
Yeah, for me, Trevor really kind of knocked out the park in terms of a lot of my thoughts. Like The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. It's one of my favorite stories I've ever come across. Joel and Ellie are obviously my favorite characters in video games. They're some of my favorite characters in general. And I think in trying to kind of figure out how I wanted to articulate why the game resonates so much 7 years later, it is, I think, partially the fact that I think all of the characters, I think it is Tess and Bill and David and Sam and Henry and Tommy and Maria and everybody that you meet along the journey building up to Joel and Ellie themselves are just so incredibly innately human figures, right? Like, I think video games in particular have a hard time crafting characters who are actual humans, are actual people, and aren't just like these Fast and Furious size like cartoon characters, right? And even like Uncharted, which is a series that I hold near and dear to my heart, I adore that series. That is a like Nathan Drake is almost this larger than life figure to a degree, and like they kind of like were enough to bring him down to an actual person over the time of the series, which is actually really cool to see. but I think part of what has resonated for like millions of people is the fact that these characters in The Last of Us are so human, for better and just as much for worse. Like they aren't heroes. Starting with Joel down, like they aren't these strong, incredible like action figures, right? Like Joel's a 50-something person whose best days happened, and he's somebody who's been beaten down, and I think a lot of his kind of soul has been torn apart. I think Ellie is someone who's experienced a tremendous amount of loss and tragedy, and I think weirdly enough, in a game that is so dark and so uncompromising, and at moments it feels so incredibly bleak, it is still ultimately a game that is centered around love. And I think I know numerous people who played The Last of Us in kind of moments of darkness and found something in it, right? And like I obviously played The Last of Us after my grandmother passed away, and found an incredible kind of solace and light within this game. And I think it just comes down to it is a game that is just exudes so much humanity and so much of the worst of who we are, but also I think kind of these flashes of like the best of who we can be. And I think it is a game that is super beautiful, and I think I'll never forget kind of the effect of like the giraffe scene every single time I watch it or see it or even read about it. It is a moment that it is my favorite moment in video games, but I think it's just like pure beauty. This kind of cleansing effect on the soul, and I think we didn't talk about it at all, but I think the music of The Last of Us is like phenomenal. Like I could rant and rave all day long, and have written pieces before about how good this music is and how good the soundtrack is.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to that because it was I took notes for the conversation, and I basically had broken it out like by period, and then after my last note in terms of like the gameplay is Joel's lie ... and then I go into, and the music is so good.
Yeah, I mean this
with
is
like 9 O's.
This is the only video game soundtrack I have, and I've had it for years. And I think, I mean, I can like get into a dissection of like each one of the individual tracks in the soundtrack, right? Like A Path of New Beginnings, holy like it's still just beautiful music. And like I think there's just something to be said of like the way it all ties together, right? Like I think there are video games or movies or pieces of music or theater, anything, or books you read or play or come across that like have this effect on you because you haven't ever seen anything like it. And for me, I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen anything like The Last of Us before. Like it was that kind of thing of like, this is kind of like such a flash in the pan, like this is what video games can be, right? And like it set, I think, such a high benchmark, and the video games have matched it, and some people exceeded it, and it laid down a gauntlet, I think, in terms of, yeah, obviously storytelling in games, but I think characterization, and I think environmental storytelling, and I think just kind of an entire cinematic package of writing and acting and music and cinematography kind of all blending together to create this really unique and powerful experience. And yeah, I mean, I love this video game. I love Joel and Ellie. I'm very thankful that this kind of piece of art exists. And yeah, like I think 7 years later, I'm still kind of in awe of this game a little bit, and very excited to see what comes next. But yeah, the Last of Us is real good. It's real beautiful. Trevor, take us out.
So yeah, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Logan, for kind of leading the discussion here. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Frank, for joining us to discuss The Last of Us, and its kind of legacy leading up into the sequel here, Part 2.
Yeah.
You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie on Twitter. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Logan?
I think I'll give a shout out to actually last week's episode of That News You Care About. That was a lot of fun, I think, between me, you, and Frank, kind of pitching those remake games. And I think we all kind of got a lot of ideas of future things and kind of topics we could do. So I'd go check out that. I will say stay tuned for The Last of Us Part 2 review and spoiler cast discussion I'm sure we will have. I know I am currently kind of trying to wrap my head around a piece that may or may not see the light of day about The Last of Us as well, and kind of what it means to me 7 years later. And then Just kind of stay tuned to That Nerdy in general for all good things.
Cool. You follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Frank?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess I'll just echo what Logan said. The last episode of the That News You Care About. Like, I think it was a lot of fun to go in there and pitch some game remakes, and something I think would definitely be fun to do again in the future. If especially if people like that.
Yeah, that was a fun episode. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I have requested off. Excuse me. I've requested off the day of The Last of Us Part 2, as well as like the few days following, so I will absolutely be consuming that game as quickly as I can when it comes out. So looking very much forward to that, and all of our subsequent coverage and content surrounding that game. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that. That's gonna do it. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest content. Again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of That Nerdy Site show. This month's episode is a fun conversation between Frank and Jazz talking about cop dramas and procedurals and the shows that they grew up on, reality shows as well, and that they had some fun chatting about that. So check that out if you are one of our patrons. Thank you guys again for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. And as always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.